Hello, DBDLeague fans, and welcome to the first part of today's Grand Finals match. In the Winter Circuit, we have ELYSIUM and Eternal. Here for you. It is a somewhat of a classic now. We often see it in these grand finals, and today is no exception. My name is Prion. I'm going to be one of your hosts today. We have quite a panel of knowledgeable individuals on competitive Dead by Daylight to provide analysis and just general yapping throughout the day between the games. Going to be no breaks today. And I am going to be joined by two great people here. We've got Tobi, the stats wizard of DBDLeague, as well as Mathis, a fellow caster.
Yeah, and what order are we starting now, Tobi? I guess it's my turn to take the lead. Yes, hello everybody, and either be it a good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good night to everybody watching out there. We have arrived at the grand final, the ultimate event, what all of this tournament has been leading up to so far. And not only is it a grand final on its own, it's also a rematch between the two teams that we are looking at today. And I'm fairly certain that that Tobi is probably the best person to talk about this, so how about you go ahead and also get your first share of information out.
Hello everyone, welcome to the grand final. As Mathis and Prion were already explaining to you, this one is going to be a hype matchup for all of us. We have the two best teams of the Winter Circuit here to deliver us some first-hand Dead by Daylight action. And I'm pretty excited. What do you guys think is the better Survivor team? I can answer that for you statistically, but Prion, what do you think? Which team got the better Survivor roster?
You're already putting me on the spot and against the stats that I can't see. So if I had to wager a guess, it's technically an educated guess, but I would have to say that ELYSIUM or Eternal is probably slightly favored on Survivor.
Mathis, what are you saying?
Well, yeah, first of all, it's not just the two best of the Winter Circuit, it would also be the two best teams in the world at the moment. And yeah, between Eternal and ELYSIUM, I must immediately jump to that conclusion that I firmly believe it would be Eternal. Knowing or having casted, edited, and watched a good amount of this tournament so far, or practically all matches, I'm fairly certain, if I remember correctly, that Eternal have been much more consistent on Survivor side, and they have gotten their fair share of 4 outs, and I don't think ELYSIUM have gotten more than, I want to say 2, because usually there's always at least one person that ends up dying on the hook on the ELYSIUM side, but Eternal have, as far as I remember, been more consistent. But I'm very happy to hear the result that you have.
Both of you are totally right. It's kind of close, but on average, Eternal is only giving up 5 stages per game, which is pure insanity in itself across the entirety of Winter Circuit. It's not even 2 people dead. They have an escape rate of nearly 80%. So they always get like 3 people out, and sometimes even the 4th one. The Survivor side is absolutely correct. They mostly played with only 5 different survivors in the entire Winter Circuit, with Kexo only playing like 2 games for them. And ELYSIUM is not far away from them. They average like 7 stages per match, but their escape rate is a little bit lower. But statistically speaking, Eternal is for sure favored on the Survivor and also on the killer side. There is the difference also like 2 stages on average.
So it can't be understated how ridiculous that stat is for Eternal. If you're watching at home, you need to keep in mind that that stat is an average of every single different set in the Winter Circuit. That means that Blight and Nurse sets are factored into that 5-stage average.
Yeah, totally correct. And one thing that I also need to mention, Eternal did not drop a single generator yet. They always managed to repair all of the generators
What?
in every single trial. All 60 generators they had to repair so far, they did manage to. And no team so far managed to 4K them. They are still not 4K'd once in this entire tournament.
Yeah, wow. Now that is one ridiculous stat. And one thing that also needs to be taken into consideration when we look at those stats is that means Eternal did not drop to the lower bracket at all this tournament. They're so far the team that has consistently been stuck around in the higher bracket, meaning they obviously haven't lost a single time. So they are our higher bracket grand final team. The other one would be ELYSIUM, and I was going to say, doesn't that alter the stats slightly also in favor for Eternal, because that means they've only played 4 games, I think, in the higher bracket, and therefore there's less stats you can really take from their games, right? Because ELYSIUM, or every team that drops to the lower bracket has to play an extra game, essentially, no?
Yeah, basically, but Eternal only played like 3 sets less than Elysium, so it's not that big of
okay.
difference. Eternal played like 12 sets and Elysium played 15, and also the only 2 sets that Eternal actually lost were like pretty damn close. The one set was an Oni set against Calamity, if I'm not mistaken, and this set came down to millimeters. This was really nerve-wrecker. I'm not sure about the other one. I need to double check in a few seconds. But no, they're only 3 sets apart. But as you already said, Eternal is coming from the winner bracket. They did not lose any of the matchups. And this also means they have a slight advantage in the grand final in form of a Joker set. Prion, do you want to explain to the audience what that Joker set means?
Sure, Tobi. So essentially, the Joker set is the advantage that's given to Eternal for being the winner's bracket team, never going down to the loser's bracket. And what it means is that if ELYSIUM were to make it to 4 match points in this best of 7, Eternal would be able to trigger that and choose one of the sets that they've lost to replay.
Rematch. In a rematch.
You're totally correct. And what happens afterwards is that if Eternal manages to win that set that they chose to replay, they just steal the set point and the grand final continues with the new set points on each side. Otherwise, if Elysium still manages to win this replayed set, they will win the grand final regardless. This is just like the benefit for Eternal, because they did not lose a single matchup yet and they are coming from the winner bracket. So they have a slight advantage against Elysium in this grand final. Do we want to take a look at the sets?
I was about to say the same thing, Tobi, because it looks like we've got about 10 minutes before the first match is set to begin. So, yeah, let's go down the sets. There are 7 of them. And I guess I'll just introduce each one and say who picked it, and we can just talk about it. Just whatever we think about it, and how we think it'll go, who it favors. So the first one is Wraith Midwich, picked by ELYSIUM.
Wraith is so far the most deadly killer we have in the Winter Circuit. He has been played like 12 times in 12 different trials with an average hook count of 10.7 hook stages per game. So nearly every game is a 4K, at least close to. So Wraith sets are pretty dangerous for our team. So I'm excited whether Eternal or Elysium know how to play it safe. I mean, they should, because they're in the grand final, but it's always nice to see these more standard killers on really good and experienced teams.
Yeah, as an OG player, it feels like we're back in 2016, where the spooky invisible bell ghost is the most overpowered killer that's ever been introduced to Dead by Daylight, and all of a sudden he's back here with the highest kill rate. So we've really gone full circle, at least in comp, and Midwich is such an interesting map to watch. We've seen Wraith countless of times already in the Winter Circuit. Midwich shakes it up quite a ton because, of course, one, it is an indoor map, which is very beneficial to stealth killers, and two, most of these tiles that we have on inside of the map are really strong for him, are really in his favor, because what the typical playstyle you see with Wraiths is they try to get to the pallet first, uncloak on him, and then try to catch up to the survivor while they loop around the tile and try to make it back to the pallet before stun. And Wraith, with tons of body block potential as well, may be able to eliminate some of those really strong windows we see on the map from the chase. So I'm really curious, especially now that this is Elysium's pick, and we've already discussed that Eternal Survivor side has been really dominant so far throughout this tournament. I feel like this very first set is already going to be dangerously close. And yeah, Prion, what's the next killer that we've got up ahead?
Next killer that we have, Mathis, is Houndmaster on Cold Tower 2, picked by Eternal. Which
Are we
is
going to
definitely
see the Ultimate
something.
Houndmaster skin again?
Yes, it's definitely something that Eternal has been consistently trying to pick.
It's also a killer both teams have been practiced and played a lot in the Winter Circuit. I think Houndmaster is almost exclusively picked by Elysium and Eternal at this point, forcing other teams to adapt to their fast playstyle. I know that Xeno and Nightlight love to play the Houndmaster, and we've already seen some pretty cool flicks with the dog in the trials, but Houndmaster is almost exclusively played on Cold Tower maps. So no surprise that they went for Cold Tower 2 here, but both teams should be able to take the set, in my opinion.
And that's where I need to emphasize the fact that this is a rematch between both of these teams in the Winter Circuit, because we already saw them playing Houndmaster in the winter finals. It was the fourth set, so as many of you know, sorry for the spoilers, but you should know at this point that Eternal won 3-1 back then, and the Houndmaster was actually the match ball for the for Eternal, so the fourth set. And back then it was played on Wreckers, because all of the so just to reintroduce that mechanic that we have in Winter Circuit is that both teams decide what map the killer needs to, what map the killer is going to be played on. There's a pool of 3 maps each time. One is banned, and then the team that picked the killer gets to pick one of the remaining maps. But in that fourth set, all of the maps that are in Houndmaster's pool had already been exhausted, meaning that a replacement map had to be picked, which was Wrecker's Yard, which is very uncommon for Houndmaster, and also the only occasion we saw her on that map throughout this tournament. And now we're back on Cold Tower. And we did see Eternal win very dominantly in that Houndmaster set, so I'm curious to see whether it was the map in the end that gave Eternal the upper hand, or if they're just that consistent on Houndmaster, even facing Elysium. So we're going to have some sort of rematch here. Eternal picked it once again, but this time again on Cold Tower, and not on Wrecker's Yard. Which brings us to killer number 3, who's also getting a map that we've only seen him on so far on Family Residence, but Elysium are shaking things up. Prion, what will that be?
It's going to be the Dark Lord on the Ormond Lake Mine, and this one I'm a little bit excited for, Mathis, because like you said, this killer has almost exclusively been played on Family Residence 2 for the whole tournament, and I'm going to be honest, I'm getting sick of Family Residence 2. I'm glad we're not seeing it anymore today.
But green is the color of hope.
Yeah,
But
it's just
also-
like, I think
also
Ormond Lake Mine is a far more balanced map. It's got a very nice shape. There are a variety of tiles. It's got a main building that's strong but not too strong. It's got some nice fillers in the middle. And then Family Residence 2 for the whole tournament was just like hook survivor in the corner behind main. They die.
Yeah. Yeah, we
So,
have a really repetitive gameplay there, and the one time we saw Ormond Lake Mine for Dark Lord, we had an absolute banger of a set, which was between Loyalty and Misery, no, it wasn't Loyalty, it was Catalyst versus Misery, where at first we saw Ultras 4K on 3, somehow, and then FaZe, for representing Catalyst, almost actually bringing it back. He was so close from 4King on 5 in that game. but he got so unfortunate. He was able to get Ultra out of the not out of the game, but he got him hooked very early on, and then he had at 1.3 almost 3 souls slugged. He somehow managed to run past an injured Ultra and did not hear him, who was already zoned at the time. And FaZe's mechanics in that game, boy oh boy, if you haven't seen that trial, you should absolutely go back to it. It's probably also going to be uploaded to YouTube very soon. That was an absolute doozy, and FaZe played wonderfully well, and I'm really looking forward if now ELYSIUM and Eternal have something to demonstrate mechanically wise on this map as well, because I can't get over how flawlessly well FaZe played that game.
All right, so looks like we have about 5 minutes to go before the first match of the grand finals. So moving on to the next set, it's going to be Dredge, but it's on Larry's, which is really interesting to me. I mean, I don't think we've seen this before. At least I haven't yet. And maybe it's been played before, but this is a map pick that I think is really out of left field. And you would think that Treatment Theater or Larry's Memorial Institute would be a great map for Dredge with how many lockers it has, but I don't think so. The loops and the pallets on this map are so strong and so dense that I think Dredge is really going to struggle here.
Yeah, that's going to be a really tough call, since Dredge is usually always just associated straight up with Midwich and never Treatment Theater. So I'm really curious to see what Eternal have prepared here, since it is their pick, their map pick as well. And we are 100% making it to that 4th set, because best of 7, you need to win 4 sets. Which brings us to our, if it's not a 4-0-3, which I don't think anyone believes it's going to be, for either side, which brings us to the next killer, Prion.
Yep, that's going to be Oni on Rotten Fields. We're seeing this a lot more recently, and also this one was picked by ELYSIUM. Oni is just extremely powerful on this map. Rotten Fields has about 5 pallets that are actually worth anything, and once those are gone, it's just kind of like feeding frenzy for the Oni.
I'm fairly certain this exact matchup, or not matchup, this exact set, Oni on Rotten Fields, is also the one set that Eternal dropped to Calamity when we were talking about the Oni game earlier. Fairly certain it was Rotten Fields as well. And
you're totally
maybe we
right.
see... Yeah, hell yeah. Thank you, Tobi. And I'm very happy to see that ELYSIUM is finally profiting from the enemies of their enemies. It's not that grim. From their opponents' misfortune. Because we saw Xeno pick Freddy over and over, even though they had practically nothing to back it up with, and also narrowly escaping a defeat against Oracle on that Freddy set in their matchup prior to the original winner finals. And then Xeno picked him again and paid the price. And now we actually see some flexibility from Team ELYSIUM here, picking a killer that they know their opponents aren't necessarily the best at.
Sorry, Mathis, I didn't quite hear you there. Could you repeat that?
I was going to say that, did I cut out, or what happened?
No, I don't know. It must have been something on my end.
Okay, again, so I'm really happy to see that ELYSIUM have become more flexible and are actually picking a killer now that they know their opponent isn't as strong on. And so far they've usually just stuck to their own guts and what they believe they're strong on, but now they're actually taking advantage of what their opponents might be weak at.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. And I know we're not I know we're not done talking about the actual sets yet, but maybe we want to get into one of the storylines today, which is going to be the clash of the killers and the fact that I think Xeno has to come up huge today in these killer sets.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's undoubtedly been almost, I want to say the MVP of most of the tourneys he plays in. Xeno is just so brutally versatile on Killer and Survivor, and he practically always shows up very dominant to both his performances. Also showing, almost pioneering this very aggressive playstyle on Survivor, which lots and lots of people receive very positively, because it's just lovely to see him play very aggressively. And we're definitely going to see a lot of that today also, so I don't even need to necessarily talk much about it. And yeah, it's going to be difficult to take down the Titan that Eternal has reestablished themselves as after the defeat to ELYSIUM in Winter Circuit. So yeah, this is their ultimate chance to reestablish themselves as the best team in the community.
So, yeah, going into these final two sets, set 6 is going to be the Blight picked by Eternal, and set 7, the potential tiebreaker, is going to be the Nurse picked by
That they
Elysium.
agreed on.
Oh, right. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I guess it seems like the teams are getting into the lobby, and we are very close to getting into the first match of this grand finals. Just one more thing I want to put out there before we go in. Xeno as a player absolutely was the MVP of the All Hallows League, where Elysium did win that entire tournament. Eternal is absolutely ridiculous on Survivor right now. They are on an extreme hot streak, and Xeno is basically the only thing standing between Eternal survivors and 4 outing this entire tournament, taking the win. So if anybody can stop Eternal, it's going to be Xeno. We got to watch those killer performances for Elysium today.
And very quick note also, this is the last time that these teams actually play against each other, because Eternal are splitting into 2, and Elysium are remaking their team. With that now being said, we are officially loading in to game number 1 of this grand finale between Eternal and Elysium, the clash of the titans of DBDLeague. And without further ado, I would love to hand it over now to our lovely casters of today. Take it away, guys.
Thank you so much, Mathis, Prion, and Tobi, for this wonderful campfire chat, and welcome in everyone to the first trial of today. They talked about it. We have so much pressure on the line. Xeno as an MVP, as we know him, especially locking in when he's under difficult circumstances and when you are giving him a challenge against survivors that couldn't be more efficient, more team coordinated, and more scary. Here with Dan, Nightlight, Zaka, and Hardwell for Team Eternal. First 1v1, we could say already. That's going to be just the pallet drop, gaining some time. Zaka keeping it with safety here, moving over to the next pallet, and will actually make it towards the window. Very well played just here for the beginning, and with me for the grand final, none other than the wonderful Rayoxium. Welcome in.
Hi guys, hello. Wonderful to be back for casting yet another DBDLeague game. Today the matchup is going to be tough. It's gonna be tough. We've got the best players, I don't know if I'm going to say in the world, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it, because these guys have consistently shown us that the way they played this game is completely unmatched. It definitely is Clash of the Titans of DBDLeague. We can already see Xeno, who is known for being an incredible player, still has not gotten a single down. All these survivors are just playing this so very well. They're not messing around. They're throwing these pallets. We can already see Xeno has a little bit of a dastardly build here, right? We've got Devour Hope, we've got Ruin, we've got Undying, and we've got Thrill of the Hunt. So this build circulates around just keeping those hex totems alive. And Midwich sometimes has some incredibly good spawns for those totems, except for that one up there, which is always a static spawn. Happens every time you have 4 totems, it's gonna be one of those. So Xeno has brought protection for his perks. Ruin is very good for slugging, pressuring the map. If you are a fast killer such as Wraith on a smaller map such as Midwich, you are definitely going to be able to get those survivors and keep them incredibly pressured. First down finally comes through on Hardwell. No generators done just yet. Xeno has been all around the map, pressuring everybody off of these gens. A lot of resources have been used. Oh, there we go. We've got the first generator done by Dan the Man himself, and Zaka's generator is not too far behind. 2 gens done for the very first chase is actually a pretty good result, I will say, on Midwich with Wraith. He is just everywhere at once. And then look at this generator as well. It's been regressing with Ruin, but still has a respectable amount of progress. Look at that. 3 gens done. Perhaps that would be an incredible result to see. Dyer, what exactly do you think is going to happen the rest of this game? It's looking like the survivors have incredible pressure already.
Absolutely, yeah. They are here to strike from the beginning. 2 generators, almost 3 generators in exchange for the first hook stage is definitely a signal that they are sending to Xeno here. So hopefully we will try to get some injuries together, maybe even something as crazy as slugging early on. That's not going to land onto Dan here. Therefore, we are just keeping up the chase in the yard here, going for the breakable wall kick here. And that is such a long time that it's taking to get the next injury. Dan completely bamboozling the killer here almost. Now it's going to be the Anuk in the distance, and we heard that little sound cue that is telling us about Devour Hope slowly leveling up there. Dan going, or we could call this a comp corner if you want to keep it like that, but the other survivors will just increase the pressure onto these generators. Hardwell has been reset in the distance. That's a very understandable decision here. The Wraith can just be behind you out of nowhere, and Eternal really has the time also to go for the reset here at the moment, as they have gotten some wonderful pressure for themselves. We see them here, Zaka and Hardwell spreading up again, going for the generators. Zaka is being caught off guard by that. Will take the injury here. Never mind, Zaka being a little bit too slippery, not taking the injury. It takes a few extra seconds, and that's going to be the benefit for Nightlight there, who has another generator prepared on 75 already. So 4 generators about to be completed. Xeno with 1 stack of Devour Hope, and that's a risky yet powerful strategy, but only if you do have enough time during the mid game to benefit from 3 or even 5 stacks. And if Eternal keeps up the efficiency and getting these little plays done here, for example, making it through the window to exchange the chase a little bit, wonderful mind game here onto Zaka, then it could be a problem. So Ray, we definitely need some more hook stages here, and we need them fast.
Absolutely. That is the downside to running a build like this. You don't have Corrupted Invention, you don't have early game slowdown, you don't have any other slowdowns to apply to gens, like you don't have Pop Goes a Weasel, you don't have Scourge Hook Pain Resonance, so you are relying on your pressure as the killer to go around and do things on the map. We can already see the survivors might have an idea of what kind of build that Xeno is running, because whenever you're doing a playstyle such as this, you're going around and you're just pressuring random survivors on the map, when obviously the best strategy in the game is usually 2 tunnel. Oh my god, little movements like that really show that like the survivors in this game are just like insane with how they're doing all this kind of stuff. Look at this looping, this really safe palette, but it's not it's not safe with these survivors. Look at this. Oh yeah, going back here in the corner, they're just wasting as much time as they can. But like I was saying, a build such as this, you're kind of scouting out as the survivor team, right? They have gone through 3 different stages. They might have an idea that there is Devour Hope in play. We saw that they were cleansing a totem. I don't even think they finished cleansing it. No, they didn't, because there's still a bunch that are up right there. We got Ruin, Undying, and Thrill. It takes forever to cleanse totems. Now they're kind of in the situation where they have to just try to get gens done, or they have to deal with the totems. But dealing with the totems is going to take a long time. A build such as this is very, very end game. You don't get the early game slowdowns, so you're kind of just relying on your ability as the killer. Right there will reveal the Devour Hope, and it seems that Xeno is going to take this opportunity to slug. Right, you can get the 5 stacks, or you could just run around, slug everybody. Unbreakable is not allowed, while everybody is insta-downable, right? If they heal, it doesn't matter, because you're just going to one-shot down them. See, like right there, Xeno is just going around. I think he's going to try to protect his totems and at the same time just pressure these survivors. Look how many pallets have been used. There's nothing left. They've gone through and they've kicked it all. Yeah, they had a great early game, but now the real game starts, and we know for a fact that Xeno is just an absolute king at slugging. We've seen it in previous seasons. We've seen it in previous matches. He's very good at pressuring multiple survivors at the same time.
He really is, and I can respect his strategy so much, because in a grand final, you usually want the pressure early, right? You want to notice how you're getting control over the trial. You want to feel safe because you are coming in with a lot of nerves struggling, and you're really excited, and therefore you really want to feel that kind of dominance during the early game. And that Zeno is going for this, you called it an end game build, which I really agree on, because it took the time to get the necessary stacks onto the Devour Hope, and now you can really strike, and that's such a move here, and showing all of his experience as well, the capability of staying calm and collected, even though a few generators have already been completed and Nightlight is going down here at the locker. Now it's only Zaka standing, ladies and gentlemen, as the final survivor. He is going to grab Hartwell off the hook, but that obviously reveals the location, and Zeno could smell that from a mile away, jumping into the locker here to waste a little bit of time, and Hartwell sprinting over there into the yard, getting the pickup now onto Nightlight and onto Dan. Trying to get the team back on their feet, but Eternal now really struggling against that pressure. And even if they would gain a little bit of time to work on the totems, in worst case, you're working on 4 totems overall, which is almost an entire minute, plus the searching time that is only wasted for those glowy little enemies, you could even call them. Zeno going straight after Hartwell here, trying to get the next down. Once again, a little bit of a miss here. That's going to extend the chase time, and that is going to be a little bit of a comeback chance. Now he needs to find a good balance between slugging and potentially progressing the hook stages a little bit, and doing that onto Nightlight is a good idea in case Hartwell, is a good idea, because that's going to be the elimination, cutting down Eternal to only 3 survivors. That will make this hide and seek and come back and pick up and hook stage game that they are currently playing even more difficult, because the resources are shrinking down. 2 of them being down over here now. Dan is in the yard himself, and that's going to be our survivor going towards the exit gate here, trying to move a little bit around, but it's not going to be the longest chase if Zeno is playing this right, and he does. So Nightlight going down right next to the team member, leaving Zaka once again as the man in charge. And I think we just heard that Ray is having some dock emergency in the background. That is the final generator, though, to celebrate the great comeback. I think your puppy just got excited in the background, and for good reason, because the fact that Eternal got 5 generators, Ray, is not only exciting me, it's also exciting your puppy, and it's also exciting a lot of Eternal fans out there.
Yeah, that's actually huge, huge, huge. I would not have guessed that they were going to get that last generator done. That really can be the difference between winning and losing a game. Just that little bit of efficiency from the survivors right there. Yes, they did get 4K'd, but we already heard from the analysts earlier that Wraith is one of the most deadly killers. So a 4K5 is actually pretty respectable result for the survivors. They were able to not cleanse a single totem this game and yet get all of those generators done. And they've used almost all of the pallets on this map. They have made Zeno really, really work for it. And I know that it really seemed like they were just all going to die there in the end with all that slugging. I really thought it was going to be a 4K1. But with these survivors, you really don't know until it's over. Okay, and looking around for the survivors here, whenever they bleed out, I'm sure it awards all of the points regardless if they bleed out. But Hatch on this map is not a static spawn. So that's why Zeno isn't even bothering to hook Dan over there, because if Dan dies, then Nightlight is free to do whatever he wants. I'm sure that he'll find him. Survivors are very quiet on the ground nowadays, so it's going to take a minute, but he definitely wants to search out and just make sure Nightlight doesn't slip through the hatch there. I cannot believe that he didn't hear the survivor. Is this survivor like weirdly quiet or something, because they're just on the ground? Oh no, tenacity. Doesn't tenacity make you quieter on the ground? I believe that is a newer change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's probably why.
Yeah, they're trying to make it more difficult here to all the OGs of DBDLeague that are sitting there with their 2020 rulebook and will now celebrate. Oh, Bleed Out is going to save a little bit of a stage. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, you have to put the rulebook that you borrowed at Grandpa's library back aside because we have changed the rule. Last tournament, the killers do not need to be worried about bleed outs anymore, so it is going to be 12 stages. The only thing that someone needs to worry about is Elysium, because with that final generator completed, it does change the win condition a little bit. You now have to take an out on Midwich, and that's not going to be the easiest part, especially the Wraith. Even though you get all the generators done, he is relatively mobile, and when he already has an elimination, for example, and a few injuries, and then he's going back and forth, maybe catching one of them off guard, this can very quickly end up in a speed run. So getting an out here sounds nice, yet it is going to be a true challenge, and our wonderful hosts and our analysts will tell us a little bit more about the upcoming strategy here from Team Elysium as they need to have an escape. Take it away, guys.
Yo, Tobi, what was that again when you talked about how Eternal have never been 4K'd?
You're totally right. They did get 4K'd in the end, but I have another interesting stat for you. Do you know why they received the 4K here?
Magic.
No, not magic, because the man Spitz himself was not playing. Eternal has played with mostly 5 survivors, and Spitz played most of the Eternal games, and he's averaging 0.7 hook stages in 11 games. This man is the real magic here, and I assume if I don't know if Spitz is around. I haven't taken a look at the Eternal VC, but if Spitz is around and he will play later, Eternal might be able to pump it up a little bit. But nonetheless, this result is really good for Eternal.
So you're saying whichever half of Team Eternal that's going to form takes Spitz will be better? No, of course not. But yeah, that's going to be really interesting to look at once we're actually seeing both of those teams, whose name I've already forgot. I think it's Invictus and Nokrum, something like that, that they both take from Elden Ring, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, let's talk about the games, first of all. There's one strategy that I want to start by introducing the overall strategy that I noticed on Xeno's part. So what he did at the start was to just commit to individual chases. He was basically, you see all 4 Eternal Survivors in a group playing together in like, let's say, they're building a sandcastle together, and Xeno was basically laying bricks around them. They didn't notice what was going on until Xeno put the lid on top, and they were locked in. So Xeno went for basically just 1v1s at the start, committed completely to individual chases. But his key was to get these first individual hooks while pushing survivors off generators to have them regress with Ruin. And then he completely dominated with Devour. The moment he got that third stack, he went through him like a lawnmower over tall grass. That was completely brutal. A beautiful strategy, and it came completely to fruition. It looked like he was struggling really, really bad at the start. But Devour is very powerful Midwich. 1, because the totem spots are difficult to know and to learn. Even if you're Eternal, they're sometimes really difficult to just find. And 2, he had so many other Hex totems that you need to, first of all, spot even, and then differentiate or distinguish from the Devour that then becomes relevant. Which they couldn't, and they didn't at the start and couldn't after. Because it would also just be such a huge investment of time to go for all the totems. And they didn't have it. Xeno just went through them so quickly. That was beautifully constructed and executed in the end.
Yeah, it also, though, Mathis, it could have easily gone wrong for Xeno.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a very risky strategy. He spent so much time on his first chase, even before he got his first hit. The survivors had 3 gens done for his first down. And because he trusted his build and his game plan, he was able to bring it back.
Yeah, I was really concerned at the start because the chases took so long. And yeah, Tobi, you want to talk about the first down real quick that you already took down?
Yeah, the average first down for Wraith is like 1 minute 22, and Xeno's first down took like 1 minute 47. So this 25-second window we saw there was enough for Eternal to blast through 3 generators, and
Yeah,
this is what
exactly.
made it so difficult for Xeno. If he would not have picked Devour as his perk, this game could have been vastly different, with Eternal even
Yep.
getting stages out of the door. This perk really saved him because, as you already mentioned, his early game plan didn't come to fruition as fast as he wanted it to.
Yeah, because the strategy you had depends on those quick downs. And we still, despite Xeno in the end steamrolling through his opponents, we still saw some fantastic chase decisions. Especially what I wanted to point out, or want to highlight really, was when Dan was in the upstairs library, and he used the gap or the drop down to his advantage, and basically almost holding Xeno in one way or another, where he cut it as close as possible, but Xeno lost a good amount of distance because of the trajectory of falling off the edge, and Dan was able to get several loops around it, also with that fantastic body block right before it that even made all of that possible, with Zaka body blocking the door and not letting Xeno through. Because that's one thing I also want to highlight is the uniqueness of Midwich. So what we usually see, if survivors play extremely safely, whoever is in chase first will eventually take that first hit wherever they're found, and then they will immediately run to Shack, drop the Shack pallet, and make sure that first chase is absolutely at least a minute long. So all your teammates are in position, are on generators, and so on. What you do on Midwich is, first of all, obviously stealth killer. So you start off by crouching by stealthing on a pallet until you know exactly where the killer is. You do not move away from it without that knowledge, because you cannot be caught off guard out in the open and give a free hit. That's exactly what Eternal did as well, and what Hardwell did when he was the first in chase. He takes that hit and immediately goes to one of those 2 completely safe guard pallets that spawn completely consistently. You always have the bathroom on one side and the library on the other, and the other side where the staircase is, there will always be that super strong pallet, either be it the pallet in front of the staircase or the one in the nursery room. And that's exactly what Hardwell did, and that's also exactly why that chase lasted so long, and we see an above average time required for that first down. And because he was able to execute exactly that strategy, they were able to pop all 3 of those generators at the start.
Yeah, and it was actually Zaka who was first in chase, right? And Zaka honestly made a fool out of Xeno in that room with the window, and he had to leave. So I would say that was the beginning of the game plan for Eternal. But it was also that Zaka got caught in a room that was where Xeno was blocking his path to the God Palette. So he was forced to play a little bit of a weaker room, but he played it extremely well. And that's also kind of what you have to do on Midwich. Once those God Palettes are gone, you do need to be playing those weaker loops like absolutely perfectly. Get a long 1v1 time on those filler palettes that are basically everywhere.
The advantage here is that all of these players are European, meaning the ping is not going to play too much of a role, because speaking from experience, I've recently played on Midwich, and even if you play the tiles perfectly and you make perfect distance to the pallets, you're still going to get hit through the pallet. It doesn't matter. But here it does matter between Eternal and ELYSIUM, because they play on, I think at the worst, maybe 50 MS. But none of their players are... Yeah, at the moment, none of the players are from Russia, so that also wouldn't even apply, because we did have Bobozavra play for a very long time on Eternal at least, and then it would matter. But yeah, it doesn't at the moment, so it's even better for both of these teams, and especially on a map where mechanics and spontaneous and spontaneous decision making and perfect reaction time matters so much. It's great for both of these teams that ping is not part of the discussion. So I bet they appreciate that firmly also, especially on Midwich again, where it's also been this meme, I think, since 2021, where people would always say, "Oh, we need to 1v1 on Midwich to test your mechanics." At least I remember that from Very Trek Disco. There's 100% people in the audience that remember that name. That's what he used to say back in the day. We need to, when he when he tried out players for his teams and so on, they would always say, yeah, we need to play Wraith Midwich to test mechanics, because it is just such a perfect map to demonstrate exactly that, because it tests your spontaneous decision making, when to drop pallets, how to drop pallets, and how to chain to the next tile, because it might seem impossible once you've dropped the pallet in a room that it looks like you're boxed in, but there are ways out.
Yeah, and it looks like we are getting the teams into the lobby here for the second half of the set. So, before we go, what if you are Eternal here? What do you need from this killer set?
Really depends on the build that we are about to see by Zaka, and I really wouldn't put it past him if he had a good amount of gen regression, like to apply. Almost taking that from different jargons of games here, but apply some sort of burst damage to the generators at least. Something like a pain resonance even, that he goes for individual stages, or even Grim Embrace to that point, that he tries to slow down the early game that Xeno did not at all, and therefore brought it down to one generator remaining. But yeah, Wraith or indoor map, Wraith on an indoor map might seem all-powerful, but it is very outable, and even with a lot of gen regression, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a more conservative approach by Zaka with that gen slowdown. Prion, what do you think? Would it be better for him to gamble in a way that Xeno did with that Devour that eventually paid off, or do you think he's going to play conservatively?
I think if you go for a more standard hook-based regression build, you're not going to win this game. I think Xeno has the right idea. That you need to be picking perks that kind of eat at the back of the mind of the survivors that they have to be doing something other than gens, and will punish them for like leaving people on the ground or sticking generators. I guess I just think if we come in and we see like corrupt pain res, I think ELYSIUM is going to be taking this set.
Right, and we are loading in. So once again, I'm handing over to our dear Direwolf and Rayoxium to accompany you for this game number 2, or in other terms, to be more precise, match number 2, set number 1. Take it away, guys.
All right, we are back. Match number 2. The result that they have to beat is a 4K5, meaning that one of these survivors needs to get out. They need to escape with at least one hook stage away from Zaka. I bet, yeah, you know what? There it is. There's the build. I was willing to say that I bet they're going for the exact same build. And you know what? I believe the survivors last game had an exact idea that was the same build that they go for. These high these high skill level teams just have like a hive mind, I swear, because we see copy builds all the time. We see it all the time. The main difference between all these plays is just exactly how quick they can get this first down and how many 50-50s they win right here. Does lose a 50-50, however, with Wraith right there. He's a little bit speedy and it takes him a moment. Instead of completely committing to Xeno, though, Zaka leaves the chase, possibly trying to pressure the map more. We did see that Xeno wasn't able to get it down very fast last game, and it might seem that Zaka wants to pressure the map more, maybe get a little bit more of Hex Ruin value, get some regression on these gens. Like 3 gens popped super quick last game. So if you're going around and you're getting these survivors off gens, then perhaps you can get some regression going. But the downside is you lose where those survivors are. We can already see Xeno has been healed up, lost Pedro, but found these 2 other survivors right here. This is a safer pallet, but there's 2 survivors here. Yeah, it's a little bit of a traffic jam. Xeno will be taking a hit once again. Now, I had a friend tell me in the past that Midwich is played in a very specific manner because there are a lot of safe, static spawned pallets. Right here, we can already see these survivors are just beelining for those safe pallets. You want to delay the first down as much as possible, but there it goes. That's way earlier than it was last game. I believe a little bit. I know it happened at 5 gens, but I think that was a little bit earlier. Oh, but another generator gets done right there. The first one of the trial. This is going to be starting the hook cycle now. We know that there's Devour Hope in play. One Dole Totem gets cleansed as well. That's going to take some time off of thrill of the hunt to be able to slow down the cleansing of the totems. So it seems the survivors are going to be playing it a little bit more totem cleansy than the last team did the previous game.
Yeah, Ray, your feelings were right. It was a little bit earlier of a first down onto Zeno, but in fact, only 5 seconds compared to the previous trial, even though it did feel much more impactful. Yeah. And that's going to be Silhay not making it back towards the pallet, unfortunately. It's going to be the down right here, and I don't suspect anyone being around for the pallet save. So unfortunately, it is going to be the second hook stage into the game. 1 on Zeno, 1 on Silhay here. We have 1 generator completed, a good amount of 2/3 on the second generator. But besides that, it is a little bit quieter on the generator front compared to the previous trial. Eternal really had some additional people working on the generator early on, and that might be something that we notice soon here. Zeno taking the vault, unfortunately, into the killer's arms here, so that's going to be the second hook onto Zeno, which also opens up the strategy now that you can eliminate 1 survivor earlier than expected and compared to the previous trial. Second generator is getting completed, so you do not need to be worried about the killer interrupting that. Zaka trying to find the survivor that has been over here and does find Swatter lurking behind the wall here. Mind game coming out, but Swatter is turning into a sweater and is making a good job on the pallet here. Nerves of steel are going to secure some seconds for the survivor side. 2 injuries, however, leaving Pedro as the potential responsible person to go for the unhook, and that could be tricky for ELYSIUM. They either need to find a moment where they can go for the reset, or they are going to pump out these generators extra quickly, but for that we would need a solid run from Swatter, doing a good job here with the mind game on the pallet. Nice fake that he would throw it. That's exactly what we want to see, forcing Zaka into the return, and we all know what's going on in Zaka's mind. Where is Zeno? Where is ELYSIUM's captain for the elimination? Silhay, you're not the one that we want to pay attention to, is what Zaka is thinking for a moment, but realizes that there's a totem nearby, so they successfully defended Zeno here. We're not going to see the early elimination, and that's going to potentially save our survivor side, especially with the heal there.
Absolutely saves them. However, now they are going to enter Devour Hope exposed hits territory. One of the totems did get cleansed, but there's Undying, so that one goes first regardless of which totem is cleansed. They're back on the generators, but they had to take that time to cleanse some totems. It's gonna take a little bit longer to even find them. I believe they don't know exactly where all of them are. We saw 2 of them, but you know what? Those could be Thrill and they could be Ruin, which are not the problem perks that are happening right now. Because as soon as this save happens, that will be exposed hits, which is gonna make it a lot more difficult to stay alive. There are a lot more pallets up compared to last game, so the chases can take a little bit longer. However, it seems that Zaka just has these survivors' number. He knows exactly what these mind games are. But look at these safe pallets that are still up like this. Oh, even a little bit of movement like that is going to be able to let Zaka get a little bit more distance right here. Trying to dance around him a little bit. Trying to get to that safe pallet before Zaka can. Will it happen? Yes, it does. Zeno does make it to the safe pallet. A little bit of vaulting there, blocking his prompt because he's invisible. He can't hit them at the same time. Only goes for the 1 vault though, because you don't want to BM too much, especially when you've got this guy high tail on your tail. Zeno is the tunnel out though. So that means that if Zaka decides to continue to go for him, he doesn't even need to go for the same strategy that Zeno went for it last game. He could just get out, a tunnel out right here, and now everybody's body blocking. They're trying to keep Zeno alive and in the match, but it's gonna take a little bit more work than that. Pedro goes up on the hook, and if Pedro is saved while the Wraith is far away, that's gonna give him the 3rd stack. No body blocking is gonna happen there, because then the whole team is just gonna fall like dominoes. Ruin is still up too, so all those gens that might have had progress on them are now just regressing. It's gonna take a long time for these survivors to reset out of this situation because you still have Thrill up as well. It takes so long to cleanse totems. It's gonna take so long for these survivors to even do anything else, and they're running out of resources. All of these safe pallets have been I guess that pallet decided it just wanted to have a little bit of a hiccup there, but Zeno knows he's just playing for his life here. But the Wraith decides to leave, going around and just pressuring all these other survivors instead. Oh man, but look, Zeno is in his space now, not insta-downable, however, tries to throw this pallet, but will take that M1 right there. And now, what will Zaka do? I can't believe he's not going for the tunnel out. Silhe is also a tunnel out, right? Yeah, Silhe is one as well. So it seems that Zaka is changing up the strategy, going for a different survivor right here. Pedro trying to body block as well. The survivors are just having to play super safe right now, but there's no gens getting done. Swatter hops on one, but it's got so little progress. It's not looking too good.
Yeah, that's the problem here, really, that all of this is not going to be traded into generator progression. And then basically you can do anything. Yeah, you can jump out of a plane with a parachute and make some stunts in the sky. You can, I don't know, host a barbecue party. It doesn't help you if the generators are not being completed in the meanwhile. And that's the problem for Team ELYSIUM. Now they are having more homework even. They need to take care of the pickup of SWAT. Meanwhile, Silhe under huge pressure to make a good chase, and unfortunately, Zaka is just going for it, but we have someone around. That is Pedro, and that is the pallet safe, ladies and gentlemen. Longer run, but please, ELYSIUM, please jump onto the generators. Open the manual of Dead by Daylight and the tutorial, and remember what's counting in this game on the survivor side. You need to get some meaningful progress into the objectives, otherwise it's not going to be the stage out of the door that we really need. Pedro taking a hit, but Silhe is hiding in the corner here. The hit taking is not going to be the largest amount of distance, making it over towards this very unsafe pallet when it's being dropped, but somehow Silhe is a wizard and turning it into such a great pallet. And look at this patience in this grand final here, where everything is up for the fight. Silhe with such a good chase. Pedro below us, still onto the floor here. Zeno being around for the rescue, and Pedro will make it upstairs after the pickup. So we have two survivors standing again and one generator around the 30%, but so far that is still going to be good news for Team ELYSIUM and for Team Eternal and Zaka here, as he's now going to progress the injuries in a 3v1 scenario. We do need at least 2.5 minutes of time to prepare these generators, and that puts a lot of responsibility on whoever is going to take the next chase. Therefore, it's very understandable that Pedro and Zeno went into hiding mode and going for the full reset here. Swatter better taking a reset as well, and then as 3 they can think about getting onto the generators again. Need to take care about the Devour Hope as well. We have 2 stacks at the moment, so just one more hook stage and rescue, and then we are having this one-shot potential as well. And we have seen in the previous trial how dangerous that looked onto the survivor team of Team Eternal. Doubling up onto generator number 4 now. Swatter meanwhile going down onto the IKEA loop here. Zaka just going to pick that, of course, because this rescue will potentially be the 3rd stack of Devour Hope that you're really looking for. Ray, it is a match on edge. I would say ELYSIUM still has a really good chance to get out of the mid-witch here, as they do have half of a generator now, but I must say Zaka has taken a lot of pressure here, and especially with the 3rd stack that is coming in onto the Devour Hope, it might be tricky. ELYSIUM has a lot on their to-do list here.
Yep, a build such as this just takes so long. Oh, and a swing through the pallet right there and taking the hit, even though you got the stun. Oh, but it's okay, because Pedro's going to reset the pallet. They got to keep as many resources alive as they possibly can. We saw last game that Zeno was able to just get through all of these pallets super quick. So when the Devour Hope came through, it just was so devastating. They had no more loop opportunities. They had nothing left to keep them alive. So they just fell like dominoes. Yes, they got this one generator done, but Ruin is still up, and it's a 3v1. So they need to save the person on the hook, do a generator, be chased by the Wraith at the same time. We can see the thoughts of Zaka, who is just staying near the hook, trying to force a survivor into the second stage. Will Xeno be able to get the save in time? Zaka knows that they don't have enough time to get another generator done while he sits here at this hook, right? So he just takes that, puts that survivor onto the second stage, and now is going around to pressure the generators now. Ruin is making it so that if you are not sitting on that gen, it is regressing. This is why it is called a late game perk. It just makes these 3v1 scenarios it feels so impossible because you need to pressure so many things at once. I swear that I think that Devour got cleansed. I don't understand, because I felt like that was a good enough distance to get another stack. Maybe it was. Maybe I'm not paying attention. But you know what? I don't think so. Pedro does go down right there. Now Zaka is in the game and he is going to slug. He has another survivor out there who is dead on hook. DOH. We know that if Zaka can find that person, put them up on the hook, that will make it a 2v1, and I gotta say, a 2v1 is basically impossible. It seems like this last generator is not going to be coming through. It's not over till it's over. I've seen crazier things pulled off by high-skill teams such as this, but it is looking a little rough. The most you can hope for in this scenario is a tie. They need to just get that one generator done. Xeno goes down on the ground. Pedro does get picked up, meaning that we know where Swatter and Pedro, a general idea of where they were. But, Xeno was also the first tunnel out target, so he is out of the game. It is a 2v1, 2 injured survivors, very little resources left on the map. What they can possibly hope for is just an incredibly good juicer chase, and Zaka just overcommits instead of pressuring the generators. But I don't think that is what is on his mind right now. His mind is, I have the first set point basically secured here. I'm going to take this matchup from them. This was Elysium's pick, sorry. So if Eternal takes this from them, the very first matchup of this best of 7, that sets a precedence for the rest of the games. That is a huge ego boost, exactly what they need to stay in good mentality for the rest of the matches. Takes their set out from underneath them. That will be Eternal taking the very first set by 1 generator. Taking all of these stages, we can see the difference in play. The survivors last game basically ignored every single totem. They didn't cleanse a single one. They just pumped out those generators. And these survivors tried to get some progress on those totems. They cleansed 2 of them, but it wasn't enough. Difference in playstyles, difference in loopings, different in 50-50s, but it will be Eternal taking that very first set point.
Very, very well done. Yeah, it seems like we got tricked with the Devour Hope. There is a long time in the game where Devour Hope doesn't light up anymore, as it usually does when you play Killer. So I got fooled, ladies and gentlemen. Wednesday, 6 p.m., we are gathering in front of the Behavior office with our demonstration and protest papers, and we're going to tell them what we think about it. Irony off, don't do that. Back to our hosts after this very interesting set that we have here. So let's see what they are thinking about the dynamic that we have in this best of 7 now, and how ELYSIUM is potentially making the very first recovery here.
Same build, different results. We saw a 4K on 0 and 4K on 1. And the core difference we had in that second game, one of the perks, I want to say the most deciding perk of them all, didn't even play a role.
Yeah, absolutely, Mathis. And there was another difference as well. That was no Shadow Dance out of Zaka. It was the Windstorm instead, which definitely got some value.
Definitely. That's the one thing we were already talking about. The potential of Wraith on mid, which is very important. It's much of that body blocking windows, blocking doors, and so on, zoning survivors. And we saw in that endgame, very importantly, a very tight 3-gen. It was essentially limited to one of those exit gate sides, and I emphasize on exit gate side because those quarters of the map are only half as long or wide as the other 2 longer sides. So the moment ELYSIUM found themselves in that predicament, there was no way out whatsoever. I also want to talk about the chase Soleil had when Zaka was very obviously trying to tunnel out this first survivor, and ELYSIUM threw so many resources, so many reinforcements at keeping Soleil alive, much like when you're losing at the front and you're trying to send in as many reservists as possible to maintain that position, but you know it's already lost, but you don't want to lose the morale there. And that's kind of what ELYSIUM also committed to, and they could not make up for it. They threw so many resources at keeping Soleil alive, and they couldn't recover from it in time, in the end gaining nothing from it, but even just injuring themselves and using up more resources.
Yeah, so definitely a big statement. Statement from Eternal here, winning on ELYSIUM's pick, and so we're going to be going into the next set here, which is going to be Eternal's selection of the Houndmaster on Cold Tower. But as we said during the campfire chat, this is not a killer that ELYSIUM doesn't want to play. Both of these teams do like to play the Houndmaster, and they both have a lot of experience specifically playing her on Cold Tower variants. So even though ELYSIUM has lost their first pick, they're not exactly going into a set that they're not comfortable on.
Still on Wreckers last time in the winner finals, ELYSIUM got destroyed by Nightlight, and now it's time for a rematch on Cold Tower 2. Once again, however, we have to emphasize that that last set, Wraith Midwich, was ELYSIUM's pick, and they lost it. And now into Eternal's pick, that they are very notorious for. You can given that practically all the Houndmaster stats we have are from Eternal, what do you have to say about what we are most likely about to see, Tobi? And that, considering you're the one that gathers all that information.
The Houndmaster started off like pretty weak, but the more we see the Houndmaster, the stronger she seems to get, because like almost exclusively Eternal and ELYSIUM are playing Houndmaster nowadays, and they just forced like some of the lower teams to compete on these Houndmaster sets. But this is also a factor why the Houndmaster stats are not looking too great. We are talking about like 8 hook stages on average, is because some of those teams got absolutely demolished in Houndmaster sets. Even Calamity fell victim to Eternal's Houndmaster. I think they got like two or three staged. This was... No, there was one...
got 6-7, I think?
There was like one set where they lost completely hard. I'm not entirely sure where. I will check that later. But before I continue talking, let's send it over to Diane Ray for our first Houndmaster set, or rather trial of the day.
Houndmaster indeed, or should we say Nightlight's little puppy coming out, because Nightlight has shown us incredible games so far. Really smart usage of the dog. It was defending a hooked survivor, it was setting up a bit of scouting, nice mind games, everything basically that you can ask for was successfully done. So let's see what Nightlight is cooking here with the Houndmaster in the grand final of the winter circuit. 2 survivors have immediately teamed up on the generator next to the hill, and we see why, because we have a 4-gen up here next to the main building. Pedro is going to take the dog, Xeno helping him out, taking the injury in exchange for that. Now it's going to be tricky though, because we're having the dog on the one side of this eye loop and the killer on the other side, but Xeno unexpectedly taking the short side of the pallet again, going to be successful with that. Pedro coming out as an additional assistance as well, and the survivor gaining some distance for safety. Very well played here by Team ELYSIUM, making... Oh, we are having the unexpected snipe onto Xeno cross Cold Tower. That's a very nice and great first down after it looked so safe for the survivor side. 1 minute and 7 seconds. That's not a lot, Ray. That's a pretty good start for Nightlight here.
That was very, very quick. I wasn't sure what he was cooking right there when he sent that dog just straight into the rock. But you know what? This just shows, Nightlight knows what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing with the Houndmaster, has been trying to pick this. They said earlier, our analyst said, that Eternal has been consistently trying to pick Houndmaster. They want to get that leg up on the competition, and we can precisely see why, because Nightlight's Houndmaster is something to be feared. We've seen this killer being played in this season a little bit, and Nightlight just consistently is really unpredictable with these dog attacks like that. Even right there, just waiting, trying to bait Swatter into coming back into the path of the dog. But we can see the survivors are also patient in themselves. The build as well is a little bit more of what we'd come to expect from an M1 killer, I would say. She's got the dog, so it's not exactly just like that. Corrupt Intervention already been used, already gotten its use. There's no generators done. A little bit of progress everywhere. A little bit of here, a little bit of that, you know, but it's not anything that is crazy, especially for this first down happening. 2 survivors coming in because they know that it is really difficult to get a save here. Look at that. The Houndmaster is just absolutely insane when it comes to unhooking scenarios. Just uses the dog to stop one of the survivors from unhooking and then forces Swatter to take a 1-for-1. That'll be another hook stage plopped down onto the ground there. We know this is a Scourge hook, Pain Resonance, and a hook in the middle of the map. This is a great spot for Nightlight. Gets some aggression on some generators. There hasn't even been one completed yet, so that perk on the right, Hex Wretched Fate, when one generator gets done, the Obsession does gens 20% slower. We don't even see any use out of it. Xeno will be taking a bite right on the arm there and is going to be going down for his just out of positioning right there. There's a Shack pallet, but it would not keep him safe. But Xeno is a fresh hook. It seems that Nightlight may be taking this hook now. I thought maybe he was going to commit. Maybe changes his mind. Maybe it's just trying to see if he can get a scout with the dog right there. Does find Pedro on that main building generator. Xeno is over here just sitting on the ground. There are 2 injuries out there as well. This is a really good result. For killers such as this, we can see exactly why Eternal picks this. This is a fantastic start. Even just getting that down earlier. The average down I can already see is 1 minute 28 seconds, but this first down came out at 1 minute and 7, so already better than the average. The killer should be absolutely proud of this result. Xeno will be placed up on that hook down in basement. Basement is so scary to try to save from, especially with the Houndmaster. The only upside to this is that Shack is very, very isolated. It's in this corner. We know that Nightlight wants to get this. He wants to get this elimination, but he has to sacrifice. Yeah, being trapped here in the corner. Oh, but look at the survivors trying to get out of the basement. But where are you gonna go? Xeno possibly playing into decisive strike here, meaning that he could have been worried. It could have been played around, but jumps into the locker and now has 60 seconds of just free immunity. Yeah, there's 2 survivors occupied right now, but this is the best case scenario, making it so that they are not going to just be going down for nothing, wasting so much of the killer's time over here. Still in that locker, not even jumping out, not even playing. Swatter is on the ground over there. Nightlight is just sending out the dog, maybe to try to pressure a little bit. Yep, gets a little bit of time right there. This is just tiny little micro amounts amount of time that is just being saved. It could mean the difference between winning and losing. The survivors in the killer knows that. Just sitting right here, Alexa set a timer for 60 seconds. We know exactly when that timer's gonna run out. Yep, it's probably close. Yep, just waiting a couple more seconds. Yeah, pulls him out of the locker. That'll probably be the elimination happening onto Xeno, turning the rest of the game into a 3v1. Still Hayes on a gen, Swatter's on a gen, Pedro's on a gen, but they need to get progress happening now. 2 stacks of Pain Resonance still out there. Barbecue and Chili letting Nightlight know where the rest of the survivors are. Now the real game starts. This is where the real strategies come through. We'll have to see if the survivors can get more generators done.
Yeah, you're talking about strategies, but I must admit, so far, it looks like a very organized chaos, to be honest. It looked like chaos when we had the first save, with someone being bitten by the dog, someone else trying to rescue. We had 3 bees of Elysium, we could say, swarming around the hook on the shack. It looked just as chaotic, but And this is where the organized chaos starts. They still somehow got a lot of pressure into the generators and were wasting a lot of time. And that's what matters here. Good to see that Elysium is onto the objectives there. It will be more difficult now playing the 3v1 here. They have round about 70% on the 4th generator, but Swatter needs to have a pretty good chase here. He's waiting until the dog is biting him in the pallet, so then he can throw it down. Very smart utilization of the resources here. Has another filler pallet in reach, so he should be good for a little bit longer. Nightlight just trying to go for the unexpected swing and just making sure that Swatter is potentially going down onto the floor, but he's a little bit too strong, makes it even back into the main building here, moving around now, has a lot of distance to work with, and that's going to be Nightlight now with the potential decision if he wants to commit or going back to the final generator. So far, it feels like Nightlight is optimistic that this can end in a quick down that he would need onto Swatter, but Swatter is just playing out of his mind here. He's going for another run. Can the dog find the target now? The answer is no, that's not going to be the case. Pedro once again coming in as an assistance here, going for the loop. He will take the punishment for doing so. That's going to be the injury right here, but Nightlight now must be worried about the generator progress, and we have a very beautiful, huge triangle across the entire call tower. Nothing that you can easily defend on the killer side. A lot of distance to travel, and therefore a lot of time loss every time you decide to check onto a generator. And this time loss is something that Elysium is now utilizing for a reset, making sure that they are not taking this unexpected snipe that we have seen earlier onto Xeno, for example. Silly here trying to avoid the dog, successfully doing that as well. All of these tricky chases, they are potentially 50-50, 60-40, but not clear at all. They are all falling towards Elysium right now. These survivors are playing so brilliant until Silhay then vaulting a little bit too late, but was blocked there a little bit in the interaction as the dog was coming out. So Nightlight getting the hook stage, but Swatter and Pedro have been able to reset fully, and that means that they have a much easier time taking it a little bit risky, a little bit pushy on this final generator, and if they are spreading up, they have a very good chance of going for it. Silhay is now onto the hook here. That is going to be the first stage for him as well, so 2 minutes roughly for the hang time. Painrest has done a little bit for Nightlight here, but we need another down if we want to make sure that Swatter is in serious trouble, and Pedro is just juicing up here around this tile, getting the injury now. Will it be a trade, or will he just move away, dropping the pallet early? He didn't really make it out of this area. That could be tricky if Nightlight is able to hit this dog attack here. The answer is no, as Pedro finds the window, and that's what this was a very important play. Now we are not having Elysium slugged and hook on the one side of the call tower. Instead, we can maintain the pressure. We will now see a rotation. Pedro is going to take the safety on the generator. Swatter in exchange operating up here, but none of them is able to go for the save at the moment, and that could now potentially seal the deal for Elysium if they are not quick enough.
Yeah, this is a really bad scenario for the survivors to be in right now. They're in 4K1 territory. Silhay does go into the second stage. Will be a tunnel out target. And the way that Xeno was playing, we do possibly, potentially, probably know that he had decisive strike. Or it could have been a mind game, but I believe that Xeno definitely did. That will make it so if Nightlight wants to tunnel out Silhay, it's a lot easier. It can definitely just go back to hook, knock them down, worry them even if they're completely unsure. The survivors are just trying to get one more generator done. And this is crazy because the average result for Eternal on the Houndmaster for Further Killer is 10 stages. So this is already looking like it could be a 4K. 4K with one generator left in the grand finals. It seems like Eternal's killers have definitely practiced. They have definitely taken the time to get really good at these killers, because Elysium is not just like a pushover team. We already know that. Look at this. We've got Swatter committing to the generator. This is just like the first game, right? One generator can make a make or break difference. Silhey does die on that hook, but look at that. They get that last generator done. And you know what? It might even be that a survivor does get out with some stages. Pedro is working on a door. Swatter is not able to last very long in chase. However, will Pedro be able to get out? Has resilience. It's going to make it so this door is opening 9% faster. Is 9% going to be enough? It seems that Pedro is trying to get it done. Nightlight uses the dog's navigation to try to get there in time, but it's not enough. Pedro seems like he is definitely having a good time over there by the exit gate. It's not over till it's over. Swatter could have crawled to the hatch. Seems like it's a little bit too late because that will be Swatter fighting it right there with a lovely, lovely Mori. And that will be 3 survivors down. How many stages was that? They say 2 stages on Silhey, but that's it. But that was like 5 minutes ago, so that wasn't it. I don't know how many stages were out the door. Was it 2? Was it 3?
Yeah, that's a question now for the VAR, the video assistance referee. 3 stages out of the door.
Hook?
That is very, very good. Actually 2 stages. We had a hook onto Swatter at the beginning. So 2 stages out of the door. So, yeah, very well done here.
That's the average result. I just want to say, oh, wow. It looked like they were going to beat it, but man, these survivors' efficiency on generators.
Okay, so we're getting confirmation. It's 3 stages out of the door. So, thank you to all the referees in the background. So, 3 stages out of the door. So that is going to be quite a rough win condition, because that would mean that you need to have at least 2 survivors outing next trial with multiple stages. But that's a question that our analysts and our hosts can talk about. So let's see what they are going to say here.
Right, and we are back now for the time in between, after we've just seen a very, very narrow escape by Pedro through the exit gate. And for the longest time, I really thought we were looking at a 4K on 1. So what I noticed, before we talk about all of that, what happened at the start, but the situation that the Elysium survivors found themselves in while Soleil was on hook was quite odd. So obviously we had Pedro already in position on that jungle gym, behind that jungle gym. And Nightlight was able to find him using, with that killer instinct, using his ability. And the moment Pedro was spotted, obviously Swatter had to stick to that generator for a while, because now everybody running in would be too risky. Pedro immediately took an injury, but somehow managed to make it from that tile all the way to that main building window and get his life off, and escaped from that scenario, even though you should have 100% perished at least on that tile already, because he got injured and couldn't make it anywhere else, really. And then at the same time, Swatter rotated for that save now that he was healthy, and Pedro wanted to retake that generator. But then big issues occurred with Swatter getting 2-tapped on his way to that hook. And I also feel like that's when Swatter got tilted a bit, which is what I'm going to talk about in just a moment. Because Swatter ended up 2-tapped there. Pedro somehow gets the pickup back on him. Soleil obviously couldn't get off that hook anymore, but Swatter goes back and retakes that generator while Pedro occupies Nightlight's time. Positions himself near that exit gate while Swatter pops it. And then Swatter gets downed on the other side of the map. Pedro makes it out in time. And Swatter does not crawl hatch, even though he had ample time and he was down very close to the backside of Shack. Really odd. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think at that, it was at the Ormond tile. Clearly, Swatter thought he was going to get away from the dog there, and it seemed like the dog's hitbox kind of extended past the corner a little bit, which ended up in Swatter getting 2-tapped when he probably thought he was in the correct position to dodge. So that might be the source of the purported tilt that you were talking about, Mathis. To be honest, that would have made me a little bit upset as well if I was playing Survivor, but ELYSIUM was able to bring that back in spectacular fashion and get outs through leaving the survivor on hook that whole time and having it was Pedro survive so long at the main building when, I mean,
Yeah.
he wasn't going to be able to get the save, but also Nightlight can't leave him because then he'll get the save for free, while Swatter is working the last generator constantly across the moon. So that all hinged on Pedro having a good chase and just surviving.
Yeah, that also aligns with that aggressive survivor playstyle that I talked about at the before we even got into any of these games. Because Pedro's very close to that unhook, while injured, but he was camping that pallet, and he knew that Nightlight could not possibly make it to him in time, because every time he sends over the dog, if it ends up biting, either he just shakes it off, or if Nightlight actually dares commit to that chase, Pedro can just drop the pallet, and then he's scot-free. Yeah, Tobi, what do you think about the result that we've just had, considering that you're the one also keeping track of the Eternal average? Do you think this is above and beyond what Eternal usually performs, or is it in line, or is it even worse?
I think it's absolutely in line. The average Houndmaster killer result for Eternal is like 10 stages. We got 9 out of this game. But the real strong side for Eternal in Houndmaster stats is their survivor side. They average only 4 stages on the survivor side when they are playing against Houndmaster. So they drop like 1 survivor and 1 additional stage, and that's it. They are so good at playing against the Houndmaster. You will see like them camping pellets and instantly dropping them when they have the dog on them. This is going to be really, really close, and I'm really excited for this trial because Eternal is really, really good on those Houndmaster sets. And without further ado, because we're already loading into our next trial, Ray Dyer, it's time to shine for you.
Absolutely. I don't know if we took the time. You know what? I don't know if I was supposed to start this or not, but I'm going to. We have Xeno already loading in again on the Houndmaster, the same skin. It looks tough with the little poodle there. But the result to beat is 10, 7, 9. How many stages was it again? I know 3 were out the gate. 3 were out the gate. So 9 stages. There was a little bit of a mix-up. I'm sorry. That really did confuse me. 9 stages. If the survivors can get 8 out the door, they need to get at least 2 survivors out the door, right? They need to get 2. But you take into account what Eternal's average result is whenever they're playing against the Houndmaster, which I believe was a whole whopping about 4 stages. I know this is the higher level team gameplay. They have to play against Elysium, so it is going to be a little bit more difficult. What is Zaka even doing right here? Goes for a hit when the dog is off of him? I don't know if that affects cooldowns or whatever. Man, look how quick those killers use that Hound dash. It is just absolutely insanely fast. They've got really good reaction time. And the survivors too. The survivor's able to react to the dog. The dog has a little bit of travel time, so it takes a moment for the dog to actually even catch up. Look at this. Are we going to see something coming out of this? Nope, the dog just wants to stand in place and bark a little bit. This might be the killer difference between Xeno and Nightlight, right? That tiny little micro mistake right there did cost a couple seconds. The first down does come through onto Zaka. Xeno does have Scourge Hook, Pain Resonance. This might be one of those hooks. Place him up on there. Yes, it is a little bit of regression out there. The build sort of similar to what we saw last game. Hex, Wretched Fate seeing a lot more play during the season than I would have thought. But look at all those generators that are coming through. Hardwell and Spitz working on one. Dan gets pressured off of his. That would have been 3 gens for the first down. That is already a really good result for the survivors. I would be feeling really good about this. There needs to be some sort of plays to happen because, yeah, that down did seem to come through very quick, but so are these generators. This is just high-level play. You think one thing is going to happen, and oops, here comes the other thing that does happen. It really is just keeping us casters on our toes.
Yeah, let's hope that Xeno's poodle is going to turn into a little bit more dangerous monster here, because if he's staying the emotional support... Jawohl! Dan is going to take the snipe right there. This is what we want to see here, together with the defense of the hook stage. Hartwell is going to take the injury, and that's going to be the trade. I think Xeno is fine with that. It will be another pain rest coming out onto the generators. That's going to be a little bit of an advantage for Xeno here. We know where these survivors are located, as our dog has done some sniffing here earlier, so going straight back. And of course it would be great if we find the reset with Zaka to put the second hook stage immediately onto that survivor and progressing the potential elimination, but that would also mean that we need to move too far away. Therefore Xeno staying around, trying to defend the hook stage. That doesn't work, as Dan the man came from the other side, dropping the pallet here, making it as safe as possible and saying, Hartwell, you are for yourself, with a beautiful dodge here. Very well done. And there we see why Dan just left the area, because we have the protection by the decisive strike. So Hartwell very soon and very likely just going to hop into a locker here, and then forcing Xeno into a difficult decision, or just getting overrun by the puppy here. The other survivors, Zaka, Dan, and Spitz, beautifully hopping onto the generators. 3 generators being progressed at the same time. Therefore, absolutely understandable that Xeno is suspecting the decisive strike here and doesn't want to risk it. Therefore, just going for the slug. At least one survivor will now be needed to pick up Hartwell. The other survivor is going into the chase here, leaving only one generator progressing the gens, and that's, I feel like, is in this situation a huge win for Xeno already. Zaka is not going to take the injury here, using the pallet as a double tool, basically stunning Xeno out of the power and stunning the survivor as well. That's now going to be the next attack here, trying to find the injury. Not going to work out. It's just going to be a whiff there. And if I'm not mistaken, then we even had the plot twist coming out there onto Hartwell, as he was immediately standing healthy again. So that was actually a really smart play and didn't need someone coming over for the recovery. Zaka back to injured, but Xeno really struggling getting the dog onto these survivors, and the downs are taking much longer than in the previous trial. I think we can see a little bit why Eternal selected this set, why Nightlight is such a known Houndmaster as well. It just looked a little bit more smooth here, and also when we're looking onto the survivor side, the chaos that we have seen in the first trial of the Houndmaster is not at all what we see on Eternal's side. They are looking very sorted, calm, and collected, right?
Yep, definitely, indeed. I would say so. Look at that. Even the Z-wall right there, to disrespect Dan had to just vault that and then not even take a hit. This is looking like a really rough scenario for Xeno to come back from. Those 2 gens just pop right there.
Wow.
Takes the time to kick it, but oh my god, and he gets adrenaline. It gets that distance right there. They're just looking so strong on this set. Keep in mind, this is Eternal's pick, right? And they won Elysium's pick as well. Not by a huge margin such as this, but this was definitely a really, really big margin right there. The survivor is over here. Xeno might be just trying to go for just anything at all, trying to go for some dashes with the Houndmaster. But like you said, Nightlight's, like, I don't know if there's a proper name for it. Whenever you send the dog up with that second dash, it just seemed like it connected to everybody all the time, and this is a really, really good result. And it's just, it boosts your ego so much, boosts your confidence so much. That is a really good result for them to pull through. Only like 2 stages, I believe. 2 stages that this killer got, and then 2 stages that the survivors escaped with last game. That is a huge disparity in results.
Yeah, that is absolutely incredible what we have seen here. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a 2-0 for Team Eternal, and we do have a little bit of housekeeping to do, because there was a giveaway going on Twitter with the announcement of Season X. We were asking you, what is your favorite moment in the winter circuit or in past tournaments, or what you are looking for the most in Season X? And when you then retweeted, commented, and liked our tweet, then you had the chance to get yourself a $50, or since I'm potentially sending it €50 Steam card for your account. And we have made a selection, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe this very lucky and very soon happy individual is around in the chat. That would make it much easier. Otherwise, we're going to find you and send you a DM later, either on Discord or on Twitter. The person that is winning the $50 Steam card is the person called Lee37, an absolute tank on Twitter. Picked a very interesting moment. I was reading it after we were making the rolling earlier. And Lee37 commented with a moment that we all very, very clearly remember. Some of us a little bit with more pain than the others. And he said, or they said, the best moment in DBDLeague was when Eternal and Elysium had the back-to-back tiebreakers needed on the Nurse Coal Tower last year. That was right before we switched the tiebreaker rule. That was actually the match why we changed the tiebreaker rule. It was very exciting, and I think it's fitting really well that Lee37 is the winner here. Because maybe we will see such a comeback from Elysium. Maybe we will see multiple tiebreakers being needed today. But I think for that, Mathis, Prion, and Tobi need to host some sort of mentality and motivation workshop here, because being outed with 2 stages was really rough.
Yes, Dyer.
Yeah, we haven't got too much time, though.
We're learning now that actually Eternal is not picking the Houndmaster because Nightlight is one of the best Houndmasters in the world. Eternal is picking the Houndmaster because their survivors just run circles around that killer.
Yeah, once again, we need to emphasize, last game was 9 stages, and then somehow Eternal broke a new record. 2 stages only given to the killer, and out of everybody, it had to be Zeno. That is the worst Houndmaster result we've seen so far. And what our casters were already commenting on, it was the smoothness in gameplay. But there must be something that Eternal are aware of, have set up that type of gameplay or strategy against the killer that just sets them apart entirely. They are so ahead of the curve on this killer, no one can compare. And I can't believe that it's exclusively chasers that make the difference here. Prion, Tobi, do you have any idea of what that could possibly be?
Well, Zeno really, really needs to lock in here for the Dark Lord set. Definitely a killer that he's known to be a lot better on than the Houndmaster. It's one of his favorite picks ever since last season in the All Hallows League. So we've said it so many times before that Zeno is a player that powers up in the face of adversity when he's down, and this would be the time. This is what we need to see from Elysium here if they're going to come back.
Yeah, Tobi, what do you think about that Houndmaster game first?
I think Eternal played phenomenally on the Survivor side. We knew that they were kind of good against the Houndmaster on Surf side, but also bringing in Spitz, kind of good. Also bringing in Spitz, by the way, which I called earlier. This guy is absolutely insane. He lowered his average to 0.6 hook stages on average with this trial, because he didn't even got hooked once. The coordination of Eternal in those Houndmaster sets is absolutely phenomenal. They really played through the entirety of Cold Tower 2 and also to Cold Tower 1 in an extent in other sets. They just absolutely know when to play at which tile and when to do what against the Houndmaster, and Zeno had absolutely no chance of winning this because Eternal simply was always a step ahead. We are loading into the next game, Dark Lord on Ormond Lake Mine, and this is the set that Elysium used in AHL to eliminate Eternal from the tournament. Back in the day, it was on Temple of Purgation, if I'm not mistaken, but this is the set Elysium won against Eternal to kick them out and later win against Calamity in the grand final. So maybe there will be a little bit of revenge for Eternal with this Dark Lord set. Luckily,
Thank you,
not a family
Tobi.
residence too. Yeah, cut me off.
Yeah,
please.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Tobi. I hope we're going to see something similar to what FaZe had mechanically wise. But without further ado, we are already loaded into the game. So, Dia and Ray, please go ahead.
Welcome back, everyone. Set 3, trial 5. And are we really on the correct map is the question here. It has always been Dracula on the family residence, but for the grand final, Elysium and Eternal were thinking, dear audience, we are trying to mix it up a little bit. Let's go to the Ormond Lake mine. We can only hope that our little Wolfie here is not going to be too cold and we'll have a good time. Xeno finding Zaka. We have seen that in the previous trial to be a very interesting chase against each other. So let's see who's staying the winner this time. Xeno not going to find the hit right here, switching over into the bat form and then using the Hellfire to get the quick injury onto Zaka here. Then back into bat form. Zaka with the double back. Difficult mind game on the pallet, but Zaka winning the 50-50 here, coming out on the correct side. And now it's going to be a difficult tile to play unless Xeno is coming out as the Hellfire Master 5000 here with the quick down onto Zaka. Really, really well done. That's exactly the pressure that you need here, and especially after you are coming out of such a difficult set with the Houndmaster and losing the Wraith as well. 58 seconds was that first chase. Very well done by Xeno here. Zaka going down onto the hook, and that's leaving Spitz with 60 and Dan with a barely progress generator. So Xeno actually being so fast that he's overwhelming Eternal a little bit. They are not spread up across the generators just yet, and Pop Goes the Weasel will be a very nice addition as well. Xeno finding 2 survivors here, was a little bit unsure who he should target, and that ends up in the Hellfire, not finding a hit onto anyone. Zaka going into the locker here. Is that going to be the decisive strike? The answer is no. That's going to be hook stage number 2 straight again here. Xeno looking much more, I would say, consequent on the survivor side, immediately going for the tunnel out, not giving Eternal any room, and we are playing again on a tier 2 killer. So it's not like we are now having the absolute flex here in terms of the killer talent that we can use onto Eternal. So I really feel like Xeno has always been the Dracula player, and I think we can see why.
Yeah, that was incredibly good Hellfire. A quick note, Hellfire does have like this tiny little bit delay when you activate it. It's very difficult to hit, but just absolutely zoning in on the survivors like a heat-seeking missile. Doesn't miss a single Hellfire. Xeno is just absolutely locked in. He saw the results in the previous games and he said, hold on guys, let me just, carry real quick. Look at these dashes! Look at this absolute expert play! But we see another Hellfire. Oh my god, you know what? It would have just been absolutely hacked if this man hit another Hellfire just like that. Is playing the Shack. I am very happy we are seeing a map that isn't just family residence, and just not just because, I'm sick and tired of seeing that map, but because this map is not built like a lot of the current ones that we have. It is very different in terms of loops. The survivors might not have a completely worked out game plan on how to play this map. You've heard me say in the past, some things like Dead Dog and Midwich, there's a very specific strategy that survivors used almost every single time. And that's why the results on those matches, even though those maps are, like you would say, maybe they're a little bit more killer favored in regular pub games, in these comp games, they're absolutely not, because the survivors know how to play them. But this is a completely new map. This is a map that has very, very wide variety in RNG of the way the tiles spawn. It's very unique. And I like that these high tier teams decided to pick it, because it might seem that neither side has an incredible advantage, but Xeno has absolutely played these survivors like a fiddle. Already got an elimination onto Zaka, which is a really good result for Dracula. This map is a little bit smaller than I would think the average map is. Look at those generators that are just so very close. I would not be surprised if there was a 4K at high generators remaining, but these survivors, Eternal, they have done some good work. They need to go around and just find a survivor. Elysium is probably they're probably pretty excited with this result that they have already. And now they have to chase Dan. Any of these survivors is just not a good pick for a chase. They're all amazing in chases. Though, you know what? I would definitely be scared of Spitz because he just doesn't get hooked, man. If you chase him, it feels like maybe you're not getting anything. But Dan is showcasing exactly why they call him the man. Takes a hit right there after so much time, though. Very little resources used, and even the resources that were used for those pallets were just incredibly unsafe. Wastes a lot of the killer's time. Xeno has to commit to get another down. Still has 3 stacks of Pain Resonance. There has been no other hookings of survivors. Goes for a Hellfire hit right there, but it does not connect. Hex Wretched Fate making it so Spitz takes a little bit longer to do any sort of generators, but all those slowdowns can definitely stack. It seems like that is the play when it comes to the Dark Lord, but this chase took forever. The survivors should be getting some generator progress for it. There's not a generator that has popped yet, so it leads me to believe they didn't double. Instead, they have split the pressure, which is indeed exactly what happened here. They are in main and they are on that generator that is in that little corner silo building. I don't know what it's called. Yes, this over here, this round structure. There's good amount of progress, but it's not enough to get it done. Even though that chase took a long time, the survivors are just not in a position to get these popped. Dracula just has such insane map pressure with his bat form. It really seems like he is everywhere all the time. It's really difficult for these survivors to get anything done. And they don't even have eyes on the killer most of the time because the bat form, while loud, is undetectable, so you don't know if the tear radius is going to be close to you, if it's not. So they have to make these really quick decisions, but it seems that like these M1s are just coming through so spectacularly. They're doing a really good job of just pressuring this map right here. Survivors are trying their best, but it seems like the killer is just absolutely on their tails.
Yeah, with Xeno applying so much pressure onto Team Eternal, it will be very hard to do well on the side of Eternal here. Yeah, there he is. I was just talking about you, Jimbo. You better get on that shack generator because you need to work on the win condition. But Hardwell is now going to be in the next phase here. Hellfire dodge not successful, getting a little bit back into it. And now having not so much distance, but Zaka after the elimination, leaving a huge hole on the survivor side, and that is now going to be used by Xeno, knowing exactly that Dan is potentially rotating across the Almond Lake mine in order to get the save onto the team member. We see the plot twist coming into play paired with the decisive strike. Xeno doesn't care though, needs to be quick however, because otherwise we will see Dan standing up in a few seconds and then he's going to be healthy. Spitz is going to watch the Almond Lake mine from a new perspective. First hook stage for him. Xeno making it over here. There was where we had Dan. Decisive strike could be fully done, but he's just waiting. Very smart move onto the survivor, but Dan being a little bit more speedy than expected, going into the underfloor of Almond Lake mine, and that's going to be a very interesting 1v1 here. Hellfire missing as well, so Dan getting a lot of time actually for the survivor team here. Really, really well done. Xeno has to ignore the survivor for now, and that's totally understandable why we see so much back and forth, right? Because he really wants to make sure that the win condition stays like this. If you would only need to repair 3 generators, that almost sounds like a free ticket for the upcoming trial, and I feel like giving your survivor team a free ticket is really what they need after Eternal has done so much. They have dominated the previous set, so what we need to see from Xeno is kinda the counter dominance coming out to give the survivor team of Elysium a little bit of safety again, and that was almost finished, but it's not going to be the successful completion of this generator as well. Painrest is having a counter argument here. Yeah, right. It seems like Xeno is actually able to 4K on 3 generators standing. I feel like this is really what Elysium needed. As said, Eternal dominated, especially the previous trial. So giving your survivor team some sort of safety and some sort of comfort is a little bit the responsibility of Xeno as a team captain, as killer here, but I feel like he's doing a fantastic job, and even more than that.
Yep, if I was Team Elysium, the survivors, I would just be absolutely giddy right now because this result is just setting up for an incredible second game in this matchup right now. I just would be absolutely just rolling around the ground. I know when that generator got pain rest right here, I would have been absolutely tilted because that was so very close. And you could see that they didn't even get off the gen, which is a strategy that a lot of comp players will do. They didn't even call it. They didn't even get off the generator. They just wanted to get one more gen done, man. And you know, I hear in our match chat over to the side here, Derolock is saying that Xeno once said this is a very fun map to play on if you think outside of the box. So if I was going to go against the Survivor team next game, I would be a little bit scared because that means that they have definitely practiced this map. They have a game plan. They know what they're going to do going in. And all they need to do is pop 3 gens. So the plan could be to just go for a good first juicer chase, have 3 survivors split on gens, 2 on a single one if you're trying to break up a 3 gen, or you think the first down is going to happen incredibly quick, which, I mean, it's Dracula, right? You got to respect the killer. You got to respect the possibility of what he can do. But man, look at all of this pressure just happening. That generator that was the most progress was the one in main, and this one had a little bit of progress afterwards. But now they're just playing a game of, can I pick up my teammate before the rest of them get slugged? That's what the survivors are just doing right now. They're in emergency mode, and you can't really be organized enough to beat the strategy of against a killer that has really good chase potential and map traversal. This is just like playing an S tier on this map because Xeno goes into bat form. Nobody can hide. They don't have Iron Will. They're not completely silent. Hears them, tries to get all these other survivors. Yep, look, this is the last man standing, and he goes down. And because of the balancing that we have for Dracula, there's no unbreakable. This will be a 4K3 result. An incredibly good. They needed this. I just want to say they needed this. And you know what? I don't want to say it's over till it's over, but man, just doing 3 gens next game, that is just going to be a hard result to get through.
Xeno is kind of playing the role of the messiahs here for Elysium, bringing them back when they needed it the most. A shining MVP, I would say. And I actually want to throw it earlier this time to our hosts and to our analysts here, because I really want to hear their thoughts on how this is going to impact the further trial with Xeno showing such a great performance here. Is this potentially the turning point, guys? Will we remember this trial where it went downhill for Eternal? Or is it just a short show from Elysium and Eternal will not be so impressed? What are your thoughts on this?
I love Rayoxium laugh in the background about the cloak that the Wolf is somehow wearing, and because
it's so
not
tough.
supposed to be. It would be a legendary skin if it actually came to the game. It just works, doesn't it? But yeah, anyway. Tobi, first of all, that first down seemed to happen ridiculously quickly on Zaka. Does that correlate to the overall stats we have for the Dark Lord?
I mean, the Dark Lord is the killer with the fastest downtime in general, but it was nonetheless 10 seconds faster than the average. So 58 seconds is ridiculously fast. But Dark Lord chases or first downs are relatively fast in general, so nothing too extraordinary. But the elimination of Tuzaka was like lightning speed.
Yeah, the death that came through onto Zaka was really, really, really impressive. That happened so quickly. That's exactly what Xeno needed as well, because the way he was playing, because it also really applies to Xeno's overall playstyle, is this burst, this constant aggressive playstyle. And that's where I feel like he can probably relate to the Dark Lord the best. Because that's exactly how the killer works. It has to be this constant swap between the different forms. And that's what he profits from. Also, that window block he got on Shaq was beautiful. That was textbook, lunging past the survivor, body blocking the window or the doorway, whatever they try to pass through, without proccing that base kit. endurance status effect off the Anuk. That could not have been better, and Zarkor paid the very high price, also faking that decisive strike by jumping to that locker. But Xeno didn't fall for it, getting him out of the game so quickly, and then in a 3v1 against a Pop Eruption Pain Rest chain, even an Eternal cannot escape from the tight grasp Xeno had on his opponents.
Yeah, Xeno has definitely brought this game back for his team, starting with the Dark Lord set. But this isn't the end. Eternal still has a killer set to play here, and we know that Nightlight is also a very good Dark Lord player. Now, he does have a pretty ridiculous win condition of 4k4, but let's not forget that Elysium's survivors still have to show up and complete the generators if they want to actually start this comeback.
Yeah, Xeno's performance just now wasn't just superb, it was ultra. Get it? Because ultra 4K on 3. Anyway, have we even seen a 4K4/4K5 so far in this tournament? Tobi, do you remember anything like that?
Not on the Dark Lord, but on other killers. Like
We saw
Etern.
4K. There was a 4k5 from Team China's Blight.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
But on Dark Lord, the highest was like 3 generators standing. Ultra did it like 3 or even 4 times. I don't know how Ultra did it, but he mind controlled the enemy survivor team into giving up most of the time. I don't know how he managed to do it, but he did it like very often.
Yeah, only the most prestigious Dark Lords unlock that fourth ability, being mind control, apparently. And yeah, maybe Xeno is also the second to break through to that mechanic. Maybe that's exactly what we just saw.
Yeah, so it looks like Elysium is getting ready here to send themselves into the game. And let's talk about the map a little bit here. What do we need to see from Elysium to make sure that they don't get like 4K forward here?
I feel like Nightlight needs to have that knowledge that Xeno has as well. We saw Xeno cut off so many survivors trying to leave that main building, and all that Xeno did essentially was always just go upstairs and then drop down on their heads. We saw that later in the game when also that pain rest timing. That's practically the game of that allowed him to get to that result. The pain rest he got onto Spitz in that corner. Spitz finally going down Tobi as well. We both can hardly believe it. But yeah, giving him the pain rest and it proccing when the general's about 98%, and then he was able to drop down on the head of one of the survivors, allowed him to keep snowballing that. Exactly. And I feel like that's where the map really comes to fruition. It's on those these major landmarks on the map. It's also that drop down that Xeno used to the underground, basically, or in the ice cave. And yeah, Xeno had phenomenal knowledge of the map with trying to play around the tunnels besides his mechanics as well.
Yeah, so basically you can't miss Hellfire, you can't miss your pounces, and just what you were saying with the underground. A couple times there, Xeno went into the underground on purpose in the bat form to confuse the survivors, and ended up getting the drop on Spitz a couple times there with that. So when you're in the underground as a bat, they can't see you coming. They're not sure where you are, but they can hear you. So let's go over and throw it to Dire and Ray as we get into the second half of the set.
Hello. Glad to be back. Nightlight on the Dark Lord. We've seen Nightlight play. Oh my god, already. I'm immediately impressed. Those Hellfire hits are way harder to hit than you think. So getting a hit like that is just gonna be, is this down gonna happen immediately? It's not immediately, but man, that would have just been absolutely disgusting. Plays this right here, playing down pallet with Shaq. We'll see, transforms. This makes it so the window is blocked, breaks that pallet. Now the survivor is completely zoned on this side of the map. This is exactly what Eternal needs. They needed an early down, just like last game. They need to get these hook stages rolling. This build is exactly the same that we saw last game. An early down again. You know what? I really did expect the survivors to last a little bit longer. I'm not gonna throw any tea, not gonna throw any shade, but with that start that they had last game, I don't know, man. I really expected it to be longer. That first stage comes through, first Scourge Hook Pain Resonance, Now, Nightlight can go around and apply Pop Goes a Weasel and Eruption on another generator if he so feels like it. Instead, finds iPick over here and is, well, it kicks that generator right there, actually. Places Eruption up on it as well. Goes back to the hook, maybe trying to go for the tunnel out strategy that worked oh so well for Xeno last game. Do we know if the survivor has decisive strike? Oh my god, that is just absolutely disgusting. I wouldn't be surprised if it just immediately picks. Because even if Swatter had DS, but he doesn't, it doesn't matter. Swatter's going down into the basement. The first generator gets done. Need to get 2 more. That is actually not too bad of a result. But if the game continues to go exactly like this, that is going to put the survivors in such a bad position. Nightlight is absolutely killing it with this early game. Exactly what they need.
Yeah, this is the difficulty, right? When you have a game like Xeno did, what you really want to do is not giving Nightlight the impression that he can counter that. And by having this very early down, by having the basement hook now and 2 stages already, you're sending exactly that signal. Here an injury onto Xeno as well, who unfortunately doesn't manage to get the stun onto the Dark Lord. And Nightlight smells it from a mile away that this is the time for ELYSIUM to get back into it. Hellfire being used. This is giving him the ability to block the staircase now. And making sure that the survivors will be held for around about 10 seconds here. Timer has not been exceeded, so no rule violation right there. And that's going to be the double down here at the Shack. Swatter being picked up once again. That's going to be the elimination due to a very unsuccessful recovery try by Pedro here. Very unfortunate for ELYSIUM. And that doesn't look like a survivor team that is playing it out confidently, that is playing it out successfully. That is looking a little bit like a survivor team, unfortunately, that is trying to rushing now, that is a little bit under panic because we have a 2-0 in favor for Team Eternal, and that still has the time to go for a head-on play. What a great move here by Xeno. He's really killing it today, if you're asking me. Having this sort of confidence and this sort of calm and collectiveness, even in this difficult situation, is truly impressive. Pedro is now going to work around here, has only the TNL, so that's going to be difficult, especially with the 2 dashes that the Wolf has. Manages to bamboozle Nightlight for a split second here, but immediately back onto the tail and a wonderful 1 dash onto Pedro. Second generator being completed, ladies and gentlemen. That means we have a guaranteed tie on the Dark Lord set. If a tie would happen, we are moving towards the other sets first, and if all 7 sets have not brought a winner, then we are playing the Dark Lord later. Ray, 1 more gen sounds so easy, and yet if Nightlight is playing this right and ELYSIUM is not playing at the top of their game, there is a realistic chance that Nightlight is taking this.
Yep. Absolutely. You say, it seems easy, but if it was easy, then the survivors last game would have been able to do it. This is something that they have to work for. They need to get some generator progress done, playing against a killer that has insanely good map pressure. With the bat ability, it's enough that they can get across the map, but this map has so many windows and pallets that you can just teleport yourself to. Like, if you intentionally don't even break pallets as well, you leave those unsafe pallets up that the Dracula has no problem actually playing against. You could just leave it for teleportation. Right here, goes for a nasty flick and gets a confirmed hit onto iPick there. That survivor is slugged onto the ground. Trying to go for the best result possible, trying not to give up this set, and wants to go for a tie. The killer needs to get everybody down onto the ground and out of the game. Nightlight knows that, however. Xeno could be just working on... Oh my god, comes here just in time! Look how much progress is on that generator if the survivors were able to get that done. But Nightlight's game sense was good enough that he knew exactly which generator was being progressed and knows that he needed to leave that chase and just drop it. With a generator that is at that much progression right now, what the survivors can do, they can either try to rotate to try to go for that right there. And if Nightlight leaves this chase without, like, yeah, okay, so here's the problem. If he leaves Xeno, Xeno can hop right back on that generator, but the survivors across the map can pressure a different generator. Even if you have insanely good map pressure, if this was even Blight or Billy, this still could be a losing scenario right here. We already see Xeno hopped right back on that generator, just like I said. Pedro and iPick, instead of hopping on a gen, went to try to go for the reset, which makes it so that they're not easily downed, even if they are caught out of position. Xeno playing a little bit safe right here. Nightlight knows that he needs to keep Xeno off of this generator, but is trying to pressure those other survivors. I believe he left the chase because he knows he had a little bit of time bought before that gen would have been completed at all, and wanted to try to go for an easy down on the survivors, maybe catch them off guard, maybe trying to just get them out of position. Takes a tag onto Xeno right now. That is good for Nightlight because that means that they can't just hop back on this generator without repercussions. Got some generator progress. That gen is looking a little crunchy, meaning it has already gotten to a 4 regression state where the max is 8. So if they can even just get to the point where it's not allowed to be kicked anymore, that could also be a winning condition. But it's more than likely the survivors are going to win just by splitting pressure. Yeah, this is Dracula. He teleports very, very quick, but just all the teleportation in the world is not going to help with the fact that you still need to hit a survivor twice, commit, and keep them off of these gens. But look how much progress, exactly the strategy that they needed. This wasn't even this generator got done. It was that generator. Xeno hops back on and gets it done, secures this first set point for Elysium. They will be taking this one. That is an incredible result. I am glad to see them take something.
I'm glad to, see them take something. That's evil, right? We would have given them a DBDL sticker otherwise.
It's boring when it's a blowout. It's boring. We need to see a healthy back and forth.
That's very true. And I have a lot of hopes for this because I really hope that it was not just this one set where Elysium is showing, hey, we are also here in the grand final to play some serious games. I really hope that this is turning into some sort of a dynamic here. And the Dredge, that is the upcoming set, seems to be pretty wonderful for that. On the Dredge, you can have some surprises when you are coming out of a locker behind the survivors. When you are being in the darkness, it requires a very huge team communication to stay aware. Where's the Dredge at the moment? Where is he coming from? Who is he targeting? So there's a huge potential to make a shakeup. And for Elysium, I feel like this upcoming Dredge set has definitely a lot of potential. Xeno and Pedro are vibing on the ground or on the hook. That is leaving iPick as the survivor with the responsibility. He needs to make sure that he's getting one of the team members back into the game, but Nightlight sniffs him out here behind the pallet. And I was just about to say, of course, it would be nice if Elysium would even take some outs here, because that would further prove the point for themselves that they can dominate against Eternal as well. With the 4K, I feel like this impression is not really going to come across on Eternal. You'll just be able to say for yourself, well, we 4K'd them as well, just the generator counter wasn't there. And I feel like that is a different signal that you're sending here. So sad for Team Elysium that it's not going to be the outs being taken after getting all the generators done, but nonetheless, a very important win here for Team Elysium. Very nice finisher here by Nightlight with the Hellfire just getting iPick onto the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 sets have been played so far. It's a 2-1 for Team Eternal, but Elysium is now able to shrink down that advantage a little bit. So we can only hope that it's going to continue a little bit like this. In case Elysium is now going to take the Omega comeback and they would collect set point number 4, Eternal will have a Joker set later because they are coming from the winner bracket, so they are receiving a little bit of an advantage since we are not playing 2 complete grand finals. So in case Elysium would win, Eternal can pick one of the sets they lost for a replay. If Elysium wins that Joker set again, then they are taking the Winter Circuit as a winner, and if Eternal is winning it this time, they are stealing the set point, and either then they have 4 and win the Winter Circuit, or we need more sets to decide that. But that seems to be a little bit in the future. just as an early information for you. Yeah, very well done here, Team Eternal and Team Elysium. Nightlight can be very proud though, because of 4K on 1 generator remaining. It sounds so bad when you say, yeah, they lost they lost the set now. It sounds so bad, but actually 4K on 1 generator remaining is an impressive result. We shouldn't undermine that performance that Nightlight has shown here while Wolfie is trying to dig some gold out of the snow here and finds the hatch successfully. Ladies and gentlemen, we are taking a very short break as we are around about the halftime in the grand final. Some of you might not have seen the announcement that we have since the last week, so we are taking a short look onto that, and afterwards we are sending you on a short please stand by screen. We can already say that the updated prize pool for season 10 is now $12,000 due to generous donations that we have received today. In case you feel generous and you feel like you want to support season 10, any sub, any cheering, and especially every donation is going into the prize pool, with your name also being featured on a special screen during season 10 if you decide to leave a donation. So make sure to hop in, make sure to support if you would like. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you after this break with set number 4.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We have taken a moment and we are loading into a brand new killer. We've got the Dredge on Larry's. This is a killer that I normally see played on Midwich, so this is going to be a little bit newer for me. This map you do see a lot in Ghostface sets. It is not new to the Survivors in comp, but it's going to be a new way to play, especially if you take a peek at that build. Look at that. We're bringing it back. We're bringing back the Devour, Undying, and Thrill of the Hunt. All those 3 perks to protect 1 effect that they can get from this game. Does have Scourge, Hook, Fiend, Resonance. So instead of just going for Hex Ruin, they have just hit full send on the Devour Hope. That's what they really want to see. Even if they don't get Devour Hope value, if the survivors have to take a time to cleanse that totem, that is still a really good result for them. Zaka trying to use the teleport ability to get a little bit of distance on Pedro, but Pedro is not falling for it. The downside of playing Dredge on this map is that there are a lot of tiles that the Dredge struggles to play against. Midwich is a little bit more straightforward. You've got a lot of safe pallets and you've got a little bit more playable pallets. But on this map, there's a lot of chaining tiles and chaining windows. And you can already see that the struggle from Zaka, except he wins this mind game right here. Will this result in a down right here? We can see Zeno lurking in the back right there. Slams that pellet right into Zaka's head. That had to hurt.
Yeah, wow. Zeno is a knight who's bringing some light. Oh, wait, I'm mixing up the teams. Very well done here by the team captain, helping Pedro, who's serving the role as the first runner into this trial here, dropping the God pallet next to the office. But you can sacrifice that when you know that your entire team is cranking on these generators and you do not have your pup Lord Claudette sitting in a corner somewhere and waiting that you are getting done with your chase. Pedro doing a phenomenal job. Second generator already being completed. Elysium is playing out of their minds. They are getting boosted and motivated from the Dark Lord set here. They are aiming and running to take the second set point for themselves, but unfortunately it is now and eventually coming to an end here. Zaka is a little bit nervous next to the pallet, and there's someone coming from the back, but Zeno this time a millisecond too early on the pallet stun. Very unfortunate for Team Elysium. It was so well done and was such a great setup here, but unfortunately Pedro is still going onto the hook here. That is also telling us that Zeno was not working on a generator, which should only make it 1 additional generator coming out here.
Yep. And I can already see it. Thank you so much for the people who are giving me stats, because this is just amazing to have. The average first down time is 2 minutes and 4 seconds. This one was 2 minutes and 29 seconds. Not too far off than what the average is. So even though that down did take an incredibly long time to come through, I wouldn't say that that's completely out of the ordinary, especially on a map like this. You saw the survivors. It seemed that they completely had this whole map scouted out. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody has windows of opportunity. It really helps on indoor maps such as these. Look at that. These pallets are just absolutely being dropped. We're demolishing forest by how much wood it's just being consumed here. We're coming out Swatter with a body block hit, but it does take that hit a little too early. Is Pedro still zoned over here? Yes, indeed. Will this result in a hit? Goes by a swing and it does connect. That will be Pedro dropped onto the ground. In this balancing, there is not allowed to have any sort of decisive strikes, okay? You can see those perks. No, that left behind perk. Look at that. That is an incredibly weird build, right? You would never take that into a public game. Well, that's because Dredge is a lower tier killer. They are not allowed to bring any strong perks against him because you could already see this result. Look at that. They have done 4 generators already. Pedro has been the only one who has been chilling up on hook there, but now goes into his second stage. That first hook did happen far enough away from the killer that 1 stack of Devour Hope has been obtained. But I don't know if this build is actually working out very well. Does use the Scourge Hook Pain Resonance, but the survivors are playing it safe and the downs are just not happening fast enough even to just get 3 stacks of Devour. This is what it's like playing against an incredibly well-organized team. These guys, the killer is also a high-level killer, but the survivors just seem so in control of what is happening. They are throwing down those pellets. They are coming in for these saves, too close to the hook to get another stack of Devour Hope. But Pedro is a tunnel out target now. Takes a hit right there. All the survivors are injured in the game now. But if Pedro isn't careful, his life is on the line. And it's more than just that, because you need 4 survivors in the game to just be able to pressure all of the generators and be chased at the same time. Will Zaka just be leaving? It seems so. He doesn't have the time to go for the tunnel out because of how many resources the survivors have. They need to pressure the gens, and they need to keep that survivor alive. It seems like they're doing a great job. They know that if the killer commits to a chase for too long, that means that they can just pop the last gen and it's no harm, no foul. It's not even a big deal that Pedro passes away. Doesn't even matter because Pedro gets away scot-free, is now completely healed, is the tunnel out target. But the survivors are going to be playing very, very safe with Pedro's life. Keeping 4 people alive is what makes the game work. Places a survivor up on the hook, but it's a fresh hook. The potential for Devour is still high. The survivors they did cleanse the Undying, but there's still Thrill and there's still Devour out there. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even bother because they have such immense progress. These generators are they're not actually that space. They're pretty close. Look at that. They did this to themselves. I mean, they had all the time in the world. This isn't a completely tight 3-gen, especially against Dredge, who isn't the most mobile killer, but this could be leading to a little bit of a downfall. And every stage matters because Dredges aren't really expected to 4K unless they get some crazy, incredible slugging potential, snowball potential. But it seems like the survivors just have it on par. We'll have to see how many stages actually come out of this game.
Yeah, there is the chance, I feel like, for a lot of stages. If we get a quick down onto Swatter, for example, pulling something unexpected, there's also the chance that ELYSIUM is just going to smash through the final generator here and leaving Zaka with an unexpectedly quick endgame. The theory that speaks for more pressure onto the generators is the fact that IPIC just went into second stage without being rescued, so the survivors making sure that there's more progress and more focus onto the gens at the moment. Let's see if that's going to be something they are pulling through. Generator number 5 being completed here. Very well done by Team Elysium. They are absolutely back in this grand final, if you are asking me. Very, very good show. Quick on the generators, great on the teamwork, serving some juice here and there in the chases, but never overextending it too much, and always making sure that the time is being used for the generators. Here we see another nice example of the teamwork. Pedro is coming in as a helper. That is very understandable. It's only one more hook stage onto him compared to Zeno being a fresh hook here. So that would be a very good trade for Team Elysium, and Zaka, of course, aiming to get Zeno here in this endgame. That would bring him from 4 all the way to 7 stages on 3 different survivors. But for that, we either need a good teleport, a good mind game, or some locker help. Losing the track of Zeno, is that what's happening? Right here we are having Swatter at the exit gate and Zeno and Pedro meeting up, and no Zaka being around. He lost track of the 2 survivors that are currently trying to go for the reset, and if they manage to do that, especially the save onto Zeno, then he's basically free to go from Larry's. And what happens with Pedro? Pedro, we love you, but that doesn't really matter counting the hook stages here. So you better get the tag onto Zeno, but of course Swatter and iPick are immediately running back into the trial. So now Pedro is potentially the best survivor you can get with only 1 additional stage. Eternal potentially facing a very, very tricky result against themselves here. The 3 important survivors, especially Zeno and Swatter, are walking out of the door. Pedro is alone with the RNG hatch as we are having it on Larry's. Ray, do you think he's going to make it?
I believe in you, Pedro. Yeah, turn up your headphones, turn up the sound. Whoa, that sound of the killer is definitely getting close. However, are they going to be able to find the hatch? Oh, look at that. We can already see a heartbeat. We know that the killer is also turning up their ears, needing to listen, trying to find the survivor. Oh no, look at that. That looks like it's gonna be it. Oh no! The patience from the killer. That will be Pedro put onto the ground. Could have been a 4 stage if he had gotten the RNG gods on his side, but it does not seem like they have the favor. This will be 5 stages. Only 5. 5 stages, too fresh. You know, I don't want to say that's a good result, but it's not a bad result. Honestly, that is exactly what I expected. Mainly because this is Dredge. That first down took so incredibly long, and we saw it ourselves. It's very difficult to play Dredge on this map. He doesn't have any sort of huge map mobility, and he still doesn't have a huge he doesn't have huge chase potential, right? Those pallets, they just get thrown, and you just gotta kick them. There was a lot of kicked pallets this game. We went through a lot of it. So definitely had to take the time to do that. But this result, it's still beatable. It's still a really beatable result, right? Like, you can definitely dwindle down those stages to even just 3, even just 2. That's the strength of the killer on this map. I would not be surprised to see something such as that.
Yes, Ray, and you're absolutely right. I definitely would not be so sure about Elysium taking it back here after we've just seen a phenomenal survivor performance. Prion, you've already talked a lot about Dredge and his strength on Midwich and the big difference on a map like Larry's. Would you like to remind everybody of what you said at the start?
Yes, Mathis. And what I said at the start was that this is a incredibly weak set for the Dredge. Honestly, 5 stages for Zaka is a lot more than what I expected to happen on this map. I think Zeno here on the killer is going to struggle to reach that 5 stages. Against the survivors of Eternal, Dredge on Larry's with the best players in the world on Survivor should be 2 stages. I think it should be a 4 out with no kills. This map is just so brutal on this killer that, frankly, is very weak outside of Midwich. And I think to give up 5 stages against the Dredge on Larry's is way too much. And if Eternal plays the way they've been playing so far, this set is going to be an easy win for them. They will 4 out.
Yeah, I think on Larry's, it's not just really the lack of lockers that made the difference, which we had an amazing example of at the very end of the trial, because Zaka was still trying to commit to Xeno since he would have offered more stages if he had gone down, but there wasn't a single locker that would have intercepted Xeno on his path to the exit gate, meaning he had to return to Pedro with that less satisfying amount of stages that kill granted him. But yeah, no lockers. And also on top of that, you can't zone on this map. That's the strength of Midwich. When a survivor is already in a room and has to play a pallet, he's practically stuck on it. And the Dredge can spam use his ability with the husk and teleport back to it until he eventually wins it at 50-50, or the survivor gets lucky enough to find a window of opportunity to make it out. But that's really scarce to see, and that's where Dredge also really pops off in chase on Midwich, besides the abundance of lockers that allows him to practically be anywhere and be on the same level as Nurse when it comes to mobility. But yeah, that's another downside to why Dredge is significantly weaker on Larry's, despite the fact both of these maps are indoor. And we also have the direct comparison, I'm pretty sure, to our previous results, since this is the first time we've seen Larry's. So, Tobi, correct me if I'm wrong, but I firmly believe that so far we've only seen Dredge on Midwich. So the stats we are provided by this very game should completely contradict or, yeah, be the first stats to really add to map variety.
Yeah, normally we usually see the Dredge on Midwich like we did in AHL in Season 9, but the only time we've seen Dredge in the Winter Circuit was actually on Hawkins. And Eternal played this Dredge set on the Hawkins map against Calamity, and the Eternal Survivor side only managed to give up 2 stages. Like, they have experience in his Dredge set, and they know how to play against the Dredge, same as with the Houndmaster, and I expect him to be quite strong here. They did it on Hawkins, and I bet they also can do it on Larry's, because they're really experienced in this Dredge sets. They loved to pick it all the way back in Season 9 and in AHL, so the Dredge is a really familiar killer for them.
Maybe just based off a hunch, would you say which of these 2 maps do you think would be stronger for Dredge? Is it Hawkins or is it Larry's?
I think Hawkins is a bit stronger than Larry's. If you take a look at the locker placement, as we had the chance to in the last trial, some of them are really abysmal. And Hawkins just offer more map traversal for the Dredge than, for example, Larry's does. And I think this is the slight advantage that I would give to Hawkins. Midwich is a completely different beast, as you already pointed out, with the ability to zone survivors into certain areas, but you cannot do that on Larry's. Larry's is a really open map in that regard, and with the current locker placement, it's really hard.
Perfect, Tobi. Thank you very much. And we are back with the reverse fixture. So we're handing it right back over to our casters and see what Team Eternal have cooking on the Survivor side if they still want to win the set point against all odds.
Against all odds, indeed. Maybe not only against all odds, but also hence or JRM. But let's see how we are performing here. Xeno on the killer side against Dan, Nightlight, Zaka, and Hartwell in trial number 8 of this grand final. And that's an interesting strategy. Okay, never mind. That looked very weird there on our end. But we're doing some lurking here with Xeno. And that's an entirely different strategy compared to the previous trial. I love this idea that Xeno is showing us here, lurking a little bit in the locker, waiting for a survivor to potentially step around the corner and then just coming out. That's a very, very interesting idea that
I gotta say
we are
something. I gotta
here.
interrupt you. Gotta interrupt you here. You charge your power faster when you're in a locker.
But he's lurking so wonderfully, right? Don't take that from him.
Okay.
Don't take the
lurk
lurking
was
from him.
great. Yeah, there was no other ulterior motive. He just wanted to lurk. He just wanted to watch. He's a freak.
But yeah, very good point there about the power as well. Thank you for that addition, even though I like the lurking much more. Imagining little Zeno looking out of the locker trying to win the grand final and making his family proud at home. Nightlight, though, on a little bit the same palette where we've seen the failed rescue in the previous trial on the side of Elysium. So potentially Nightlight having a better time on this one, but the answer is no. Zeno getting a really quick down, much further than in the previous trial. 1:36, so roughly 1 minute and 30 for the first down here, which is a good move by Zeno. First hook stage coming in, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone remember we had 5 stages in the previous trial, so essentially 2 kills are enough. That would be the 6 stages that you need to accumulate here to make a win, and with that first stage you're definitely looking forward into a good trial. However, Dan and Hartwell are already showing that Eternal is on track with their objectives.
Yep, they got those generators already being worked on. They got 1 done. We can already see that there was 2 lurking. The first down happened a little bit quicker than last time, about disparity of 30-40 seconds. So that does help a little bit. Not a lot of resources were used, however. So it is first down, yes, but a lot of these pallets are still going to delay even more downs. They have a little bit different build than what Zaka brought last game. We don't have Devour, which I think is a really good move on the killer's part. Not going for that playstyle of just going for the hit and runs. Well, a little bit more of hit and running, because you can see the addition of Sloppy Butcher onto the build. Makes it so if a survivor is injured by the killer's normal M1 attack, it applies an effect that makes it really difficult to heal. It makes it take a little bit longer. So if you're tagging somebody and they're leaving, they need to go off and they need to heal. This does help in scenarios in which you are hit and running, yes, but also in scenarios with body blocking. We did see that come through a little bit last game. It makes it so if the servers want to body block and they have to heal afterwards, it takes a little bit longer. So we can see a little bit of that result right here. There's 2 survivors who are injured, out there running around, out and about. Dan is the last person, will be taking a tag as well. That means that everybody is injured, and now you are in a mode where you are able to teleport across the map really fast and create a little bit of a line of detection where you can find survivors and catch them out. Dan, will you be going down here? This will be the 3rd down. This is quickly looking like they are going to be able to get all of these stages. One of the totems has been cleansed, yes, but 4 stacks of Pain Resonance are still up, and now the entire team has to reset to not be snowballed. This build is just already looking like it's working out a lot better for Zeno.
That is indeed the case. Yeah, you are looking onto the 2nd hook stage. So basically 30% of your mission is completed. You have 2 injuries on Zaka and Hartwell. So even if you lose these survivors, they either need to go for the reset if they don't want to take and carry a lot of risk with them around. And then you have Sloppy Butcher coming in that is going to increase the healing time significantly. And if they deny it and just stay with the generators, then you can just teleport for a few generators and you're finding the injured survivors over there, making it a lot easier to get the needed M1s and the stages in. So a lot of options here for Zeno. Nightlight bringing us towards the corner of Larry's. That's a smart choice though, because that is dragging the killer away from the active generators. Zeno with a very wild mind game, throwing the mouse around through his room here, trying to trick Nightlight, but that's not going to work out. The pallet is still standing. Now trying with the famous Dredge mind game here with the teleportation being set down. Nightlight taking the injury here, is holding W away. Will be interesting to see if Eternal is sending someone over, if they think that this is going to be worth a hook's a body block and then extending the chase like this, or if they will say, let's just take Nightlight onto the hook. He has a little bit of extra hang time with the 2nd stage, and then we're just focusing the generators. For now, it seems to be very quiet around the actual chase. We're focusing the generators over here. Quite some good progress. Zeno, just in case, checking the locker. And even though Ray would say that he's trying to charge his power faster, I think we have once again little Zeno lurking out of the locker, trying to find the survivor for his grand final success. However, Eternal is speeding it up, and as good as 3 stages are looking, basically halftime on the win condition, we still need some injuries and downs, and if that's not coming in, Eternal will be quicker in endgame than we think at the moment.
Yep. These kind of scenarios, you need to not make a single mistake. Kicks that generator, does not have eruption, however, so that is the only regression event that is going to be happening. And we saw that there was a healthy survivor near there, so they're definitely going to be hopping back onto that as quickly as possible. Here is the effect. Yes, they did have early downs. Yes, all of that good stuff, but look at that. This is the effect of still having a lot of safe pallets up on the map. It can quickly turn the tides and make what a game that looked like it was in favor of the killer is now back onto the survivor's plate. The survivors have all reset. Look at that. That's 2 different generators with a healthy amount of progress. There's only been about 3 stages. So if the survivors can keep this up, if they can keep the ball rolling and being incredibly careful, incredibly smart with their chasing, goes for a little bit of a little fun mind game there, but it doesn't work out. Dan does take a hit. Is Sloppy Butcher. That can work for in the favor of Xeno, however. Even just 1 tag can make the difference, because then that is 1 survivor that is out because they can't risk being caught off guard by the dredge, and then also another survivor that has to take the time to heal them. But we did see that when Dan took that hit, he ran to one of the only safe pallets that's left on the map. That one cannot be outplayed by Dredge no matter how you look at it. So the survivors are just beelining to their pallets to make it so even if they are injured, they're not completely getting caught out. Loses a mind game right there. Calls out the fact that Nightlight was doubling back into that remnant left behind. If the survivor runs through it, the Dredge cannot teleport to it. So takes a hit right there. Kicks that safe pallet, comes here to kick this generator. He's probably going to run over there and kick that generator that was on the other side of the map as well. But the survivors have already left. There's only 1 survivor that's injured, but it seems that even 1 injury is enough to create some scattering amongst the survivors, right? They don't want to give even a single more stage. If they give 2, then that is a good and that is really good for the killer, man. Like they need to not give up anything, and they know that, because even if 1 survivor goes down right here, if Xeno decides to just stay by the hook and even take 1-for-1s or even just take like some camping stages, that is definitely going to be the win. Yeah, you can see they're playing as if they can only give up 1 more stage, because really that gets the ball rolling again. They go and they take a body block hit. Sloppy Butcher puts so much pressure on them, though. That's 2 survivors that are out for the count, and they definitely need to find a safe spot to heal back up as well. That pallet that they were at earlier has been broken. Goes into the locker, charging up their power. I love to see this play. This is something you haven't seen a lot in these comp games. Just taking the time to slow down, because as the killer, you feel insanely pressured to be just on the survivors at all time. But Xeno is taking a step back. He's letting his Nightfall power charge, because it is incredibly powerful detection tool. It also lets you use your chase power a little bit more while you're in chase, of course. But this detection right here, just teleporting across the map to these lockers, it lets you try and catch people off guard. A lot of the safe pallets are gone now. Look, another generator has quite a bit of progress, however. I don't know if either way is leaning towards either side. I can't tell what if the killer is in favor here, if the survivors are in favor. It really just seems like we're at a standstill where nobody wants to overextend, because making a mistake at this point will cause you to lose this matchup.
Yeah, this standstill is really interesting, right? Because it's showing us that the teams are both realizing that every next mistake is potentially the decision in this set. Xeno is trying to get the tags here and there, and it feels like Eternal is healing their survivors before Xeno can even injure them. They already have a first aid kit by themselves, it feels like. So yeah, let's see who's making this upcoming mistake. If it's going to be one failed body block, one miscommunication on the survivor side where they are running into each other, or if Xeno should have at the end committed to someone instead of taking all of these individual teleportations and trying to confuse the survivor team. It seems like here we have a good chance, but I already hear the footsteps, I believe, behind us. However, this is what we talked about. One mistake coming out. Hartwell is a fresh hook also. So for now, this is hook stage number 4. But we have 4 individual survivors, which is much better than 2 individual survivors in the previous trial. So if Hartwell goes into second stage, or any 1v1, 1-for-1 is being taken, this would be the immediate win for Team Elysium here. Zaka is around and Xeno is trying to go for the injury here. That is very understandable. Now that seems to be the trade that is going to happen, but if Zaka is going down here and going to be thrown onto the hook, in this case it would already be enough. Xeno is mind gaming, but the only one he's mind gaming is himself. Xeno, you need to make sure that you're getting these survivors together. You need to make sure that it's either Hartwell or Zaka or Nightlight or Dan. It doesn't matter who it is, but you need to get one of them, otherwise it is going to be Eternal taking it last second here in this very important set, because a 3-1 would be such a difference compared to the 2-2 that is possible here. There's going to be the difficult mind game now. Is it going to be successful? The answer is yes. And all the Elysium fans can jump up on their couch at home. They can raise and praise their Xeno shrines and their shirts that they have printed for the grand final. We are back on a tie, ladies and gentlemen. 2-2 between Eternal and Elysium after 4 sets, after 3 hours into this grand final. We are on a 2-2 and the clean tie condition between these 2 teams. 2 more sets to go to be crowned the winner in this winter circle. For Elysium, it would be even 3 more sets to go, as Eternal has this 1 Joker set. But what a comeback by Team Elysium here, getting down 2-0 against Eternal here and then making the comeback all the way. And we couldn't ask for a better set to come up next. It is going to be the Oni, and that is such an intense set for so many reasons. So much of a mechanical test in the early game, so much of a turnaround possible with the power and the mobility. The best set, if you are asking me, that could be played when we are having the 2-2. Looking forward to what the hosts and our analysts are thinking about the upcoming Oni trial.
Couldn't have put it better myself. I think we're going to throw you back over to our analyst for a moment. Maybe they can talk to us a little bit about Oni. That is a killer that I know some people are excited for, and incredibly good snowballing killer with a really bad early game. It is so dependent on the time you get that first hit.
Yep, thank you, Ray. And the Oni, as Ray just said, is a very weak killer until he gets that first hit. And on a map like Rotten Fields, it kind of turns the dynamic on its head between the survivor and the killer, because the survivors are constantly contending with the fact that they are running out of resources. Rotten Fields is such an open map. The tiles are extremely far apart. If the survivors lose that cow tree pallet or a jungle gym very early in the game, then that could very well be a quarter of their resources gone forever. And once the Oni gets that power, with so much space between the tiles, it can only be a matter of time before the survivors start to go down. So a perfect first chase is imperative for the survivors on this map. And if the Oni is able to get something going before the resources are gone, it's going to be over for the survivors.
Rotten Fields is kind of a doozy. It's got very little tiles to play around, but the few tiles it has can be extremely powerful. The one that I'm especially thinking about would be that one with the hay bale stacks that is extremely long, where the pallet is practically completely safe. And even if you get that ability, if survivors get a lot of time to hide before you would even reach any of them if you're not already on someone's back and you're trying to use your power on the person that you've just spotted, essentially. Then you can hide out that ability quite successfully too. We have seen Zarkov struggle on this map before in this very tournament. Not sure if we've seen Xeno on Oni yet. I know, at least on Rotten Fields, I know he's played it countless of times with both Zark and Zark or Xeno, and including Nightlight too, being such versatile killers. But Xeno, of course, in that unique role, taking up every single killer role for his team. So I'm really curious to see how well he's going to respond to the prowess we see on Eternal's Survivor side, because they like to play their games flawlessly, and they are very well aware of the distance keeping that they need to maintain between the Oni and themselves. And Oni, of course, has some of the longest first down times anyway, because he needs to get his power first to really get downs, unless you get extremely lucky and get your M1 downs fairly early, which we have seen countless of times before. So, yeah, Tobi, what are the stats telling us regarding to that?
The stats are telling us that both teams have actually played Oni this tournament already. Xeno won his Oni trial only by 1 fresh hook, so it was kind of close. Zaka lost this one really close Oni trial against Calamity by some millimeters with a hit tank. But in general, you're totally right. Some Oni chase times are incredibly long. We have seen teams running around Oni for over 6 minutes on certain maps. I think it was Mount Ormond Resort 3, if I remember correctly. But yeah, let's see how far, or how long rather, our teams can run the Oni on Rotten Fields, a map with not the most resources in the game. But in general, Oni is kind of on the weak end in the Winter Circuit, or on the weaker end. The average is like 7.5 hook stages per game, and the average first down is like 2 minutes 24. The only killer that has a slower first down time is the Nightmare, and this is only because of one trial where I think it was Oracle versus Sinners, and the Sinners Survivor side managed to run the Oracle killer for like 7.5 minutes. It was crazy. This is the only reason why Oni isn't the slowest killer.
Oh yeah, that 6-minute Oni game. You've brought back some grim memories of that trial where we saw, I'm pretty sure the only reason why that was even possible is because we saw someone successfully run out the power on because of the abundance of tiles you have, or filler pallets rather, on Ormond. But that's what you're lacking here. So I'm not sure if that's really possible to do on a map like Rotten Fields. The other variants would be very possible. Especially with Rotten Fields is in this unique position, but I feel like Thompson House and Rancid, that would be very possible to do, also speaking from experience. But when you can basically run an Oni all game long and not give them a single hit. But Rotten Fields, yeah, it becomes tricky. And I can imagine what our Survivor team is probably going to do is that they're going to get found on tiles on the outskirts of the map, then play that, try to make it to Shack, use Shack as sort of this catalyst mid-chase. Maybe use Shack Pellet if push comes to shove, but they're most likely just going to try to play around the window and then chain it back to any of the remaining tiles. Prion, do you have any finishing thoughts before we load into this game?
Yeah, as we're loading into the game, and right before I throw it back to Dyer and Ray, I just want to point out that Xeno is on killer once again here because of the snake format. And he is somebody who is so good at carrying momentum here. So with ELYSIUM taking that last set, tying it up, Xeno, watch his performance here. He's going to be the most important player in the lobby. See if he can secure that 4K and keep ELYSIUM rolling.
Nice. Xeno on the Oni. I can't imagine a better person to playing an incredibly good slugging killer. We've seen Xeno do some incredible plays in the past, and I am looking forward to it again today. The build: Corrupt Intervention, Brutal Strength, Scourge Hook, Pain Resonance, and Eruption. It is very common to see a chase perk placed upon this killer because, like we have been overstating, the first hit is when the game really starts. You need to get that first hit, and Brutal Strength lets you go there. Sometimes you see people use Bamboozle, but this is Rotten Fields. This isn't a map that has an insane main building that needs to have a window that is blocked off. Another pallet just gets chunked through. Dan is trying his hardest to make it so the first hit doesn't come for completely free. But the last tile that he has available here is the LT wall. This is not going to be an easy tile to outplay a killer at. They need to win and imagine a huge amount of 50-50s to win. Yes, right there. Gets enough distance, and you can't blame him. That was a really bad spot to be in right there. Completely gets zoned into an LT wall, loses that 50. And this is why we say the first hit matters, not even the first down. Because when you are chasing a survivor that is injured, they are dropping all of these blood orbs, and then you go into your power. And that is when you are really dangerous as Oni. A good Oni can do an insane flick tech where you can spin your camera more than just the 90 degrees. And I'm willing to bet we will be seeing that today. Gets Dan down onto the ground and also gets his power at the same time. He is running an add-on that makes it so when survivors do actions such as dropping pallets or vaulting windows, they drop, I think it's twice as many blood orbs. So you can see the plan. Get the first hit, get your power, and get it quick. 2 generators get done. The downside of playing on Rotten Fields is that this map is very large. There's a lot of dead space just in the middle with all those corn stalks. Yeah, there are like a lot of space between tiles, but then when you have your power, you can't overextend. You can't activate it without having eyes on a survivor. That is a good practice to have even on smaller maps such as Cold Tower, but it is insanely punishing on this map. You need to save your power for the perfect time. You can't pop it where there are more safer tiles as well, because that is still a huge time investment. This side of the map is made completely unsafe. Does still have Country there, but I think that Xeno is just trying to secure some downs here. I have seen Oni played on this map in the past, and I will say it's just hard to spread yourself across the map. Pops his power, actually. Spitz was lurking, trying to get the save here. Dan will definitely be going to second. I believe the reason that Xeno was popping his power, he's looking for the person who's coming for the save, except he had the right idea, but was not on the right side of the map. If it went the other way, Xeno definitely would have gotten a down there. Spitz would have caught that Oni stick right in the face. But this is kind of the downside right here. If you hadn't found this survivor, you would have been out of the power. Will we be seeing an insane Oni flick? Flicks to the other side, does predict the pathing of the Claudette. Oh, tries to go for a hit right there as well. Tries to swing a little bit in front of it because there is pallet priority. Tries to get a swing and gets him down with the very last millisecond of his power. Best case scenario, Dan is out there, however. He is the Death Hook tunnel out survivor, but does get reset. And if I was on the survivor team, I would be playing it safe.
I would be playing it safe as well, yeah. After losing someone like this, and then getting the chance that Zaka is taking the hook stage instead, you really need to make sure that you are getting the most benefit out of it, that you are punishing Xeno now for not being consistent there on the elimination plan, that you are utilizing all the resources that you have on your... See, Xeno is tryharding. He's still damaging the generator with teleportation because he knows that he needs to somehow regress these generators. Spitz is going to be the next one, hopefully not on a Z-wall, as we all remember what he's capable of doing there. Very good runner for Team Eternal here, unfortunately not having so much to work with, so it's going to be a pretty quick injury. Xeno making a little bit of housekeeping here, taking care of the generators that are quite far progressed, and now collecting some blood orbs, and then you need to really carefully collect collect blood orbs, we did that, but you really need to be careful now where you are going next. You need to go towards that generator with a lot of progress. That's behind us, so hopefully he knows that there is going to be someone close by he can catch easily, because otherwise we need to be worried that the end game is around very soon. We need to find it down with this power. We need to find one survivor who is either not expecting it, that Xeno is coming around, short fake there, seeing if there's a head-on survivor inside of the locker, but it seems like Eternal Survivor, they just locked off. They sold their PCs and are nowhere to be found except here on the country. There we have Zaka, and that's going to be the down that you are really, really looking for. Once again, final millisecond here for our Oni. That's going to be the second stage onto Zaka, but I don't really think an elimination is now coming in clutch anymore, as our survivors are so close towards the end game here. We will see the focus more onto Nightlight and Spitz, as they are the fresh survivors that would grant 3 additional stages if we are getting them. The average onto Oni is a little bit under 7.5 stages, so very often we see at least 2 escapes against the Oni, which at the moment seems to be realistic for the survivor team of Eternal, if they are playing it efficient and if they are able to survive this power. This is going to be the difficult task for them now, because remember, Spitz and Nightlight, the 2 fresh survivors, they are the ones that you are looking for, and Nightlight unfortunately not be as stealthy as he thought he is. That's going to be a very huge win for Xeno here. That's 3 stages in addition if this survivor would die on the hook. Xeno, yeah, he was considering for a moment to go a little bit further there for the pain risk, but it is too late, so we are going to see the end game now. I would honestly totally understand if Eternal is just going to take the outs here and keeping it on 7 stages. It would be a result around the average, something that is absolutely not bad, something that your killer can absolutely work with. But on the other hand, knowing Eternal, they are often taking completely risky end games, and very often very successfully. So yeah, seeing Spitz here, I wouldn't be surprised if they are making one more return into this.
I would not be surprised at all. We can already see Spitz lurking there, and you know what? His track record checks out. I mean, he doesn't really get hooked that often, so having him lurk for this definitely seems like they're setting up for something. They do have a couple blood orbs sitting underneath that hook, but I don't believe it's enough. If you don't, oh, it was enough. If you don't collect them, your power passively goes higher. That was on purpose. Yes, I'm so glad to see that. Xeno now has his power, and Spitz might have been lurking there just having an idea, but they're going to just take it. Oni in power means that absolutely somebody is going to go down. There are 2 stages on Dan, 2 on Zaka, now 2 on Nightlight, about to be 3. That's 2, 4, 6, 7 stages, 3 fresh. Honestly, a very admirable result. Not having the time to be able to snowball this is still definitely winnable. Still definitely winnable, though. We can't count on one side. I would say that's a pretty great result. Finding Nightlight there with his little butt sticking out, that had to have felt so bad. But I know that's what you get for being a stealthy little rat. But that is a really great result. We'll have to see what the killer of Eternal. Is it going to be Zaka? Is it going to be Nightlight? Or Zaka, yeah. It's going to be Zaka, probably.
I think so as well. Zaka should take the responsibility here. It will be a tricky trial. It will be interesting to hear the game plan, what our analysts are thinking. I would expect a good chance being the elimination happening early, because Xeno was kind of missing on that potential in his trial. So maybe that's where Zaka can attack here. But let's hear what Prion, Mathis, and Tobi are thinking about it.
Yeah, there's 7 stages and 3 fresh Tobi. Isn't that exactly the average we have for I was about to say Obi. maybe that also applies to him as well, actually. But yeah, isn't that the average we have for Oni?
It's basically exactly the average. The average hook is like 7.5, but yeah, It's as close as it gets, but it was really unfortunate that Nightlight got caught out there. So the result for Eternal could have been way better, but they have to work with it regardless. And let's see whether most likely Zaka can turn this around. But I have to point out the first down onto Dan was really, really fast, like 45 seconds faster than usual, and he did not even use his ability. He was just zoning Dan into a corner, breaking 3 pallets, and just M1ing him down.
And here I am telling everybody that that should never happen. But yeah, that also shows again how weak some of these tiles really can be on Rotten Fields, because those TLs are just atrocious. That's bound to be a hit sooner or later, and Xeno demonstrated that as well. What he also demonstrated is Oni's camping power, so where he can even rival the fiercest of cannibal players, where once you have that power and you've got your hook and it's ready, what are the survivors gonna do? You can pop it at any time, and it also lasts. Pretty sure it's 45 seconds on base kit, and that's so if you wait out those first 25 seconds, you can essentially just insta pop your power, and that person is 100% going to the next stage, unless you still want to keep a couple of seconds after, which is exactly what Xeno did to catch Zaka off guard twice, at the very last minute second of each of his powers, of each of the occasions that Zaka ended up going down. And while Eternal were trying to show how easy it can be to run out the power on this map, Zaka was found in that very, very last second twice. That is super, super unfortunate. And so far, I feel like also we've got this reoccurring theme that both of these teams underestimate each other, because they both bring pain resonance on most of the trials so far, and we only see it proc once, twice, sometimes not at all. So obviously pain resonance depends on you downing multiple survivors throughout the trial without all generators popping, and not essentially going for the tunnel out unless you can get a 3v1, obviously, and you still have 3 stacks, which is what Xeno did in the Dracula game, where he forced the survivors into a deadlock. But besides that, I feel like they've been underestimating each other on Survivor, and therefore not getting any value. Also with that Devour Hope play that Zaka was trying to go for on Dredge, completely backfired.
Yeah, absolutely, Mathis. And like you said, this was a pretty average result for an Oni on Rotten Fields, but with ELYSIUM on the Survivor here, like you said, with the Oni camping hooks in his power, we just go back to the fundamentals of competitive DBD, which is that your first chase must be long enough to make the killer think that he can't afford to camp. And your first chase must go to a place that is not near generators so that the killer feels like he can't camp it. So all of these fundamentals are exacerbated on Rotten Fields because of the distance between the tiles and the way that there's just barely any resources here. So I really think it comes down to grinding the Survivor fundamentals, and you get punished even harder for messing that up on Rotten Fields.
Do you think that that's what Elysium's survivors should focus on in the upcoming game? To really grind down on the fundamentals, as you said, and play super safe maybe? Or be more aggressive as on par with Xeno's preferred playstyle?
I wouldn't say that it's about playing extremely safe, but more like it almost doesn't even matter if your first chase isn't long as it goes to a place that Zaka does not want to be. And I think that's what we saw in the last game, where the first chase ended up being pretty quick, but it didn't really result in a snowball for the Oni.
Yeah, and I feel like that's where also Xeno lost all of the momentum he had at the start of the trial, because as Tobi already pointed out, that down was much faster than what we usually spectate on average when it's an Oni game. Still, he was able to force him into second stage, but did he really profit from it? Because he still had all of his 3 teammates that obviously weren't on hook on the other side of the map, working on generators, getting a significant amount of progress there. And Xeno also did not profit from that second stage. Dan never perished. It was the only person that died on hook was Nightlight in the end, because he was caught in that was caught in endgame, as both of our casters emphasized on multiple times, in a super unfortunate position. So yeah, we're getting closer to that reverse fixture now. And I feel like Zaka needs a similar start, but instead of camping, maybe, depending on his perks as well. If he has Pain Resonance again, he might want to rather try on getting individual downs, rather than what Xeno did, losing all his momentum, getting practically zero value from his regression perks. And yeah, we're about to see Zaka has played a fair share of Oni, a very good amount. And he is now considered one of the fiercest in the community, as can be expected with both of these players that we see on each respective killer side today. I'm handing over to the casters. We are in game number 2 of the...
Ladies and gentlemen, trial number 10 between Zaka for Team Eternal and ELYSIUM on the survivor side. It is going to be a difficult trial ahead. 7 stages on 3 survivors were accumulated in the previous trial. So round about 3 kills is what we can point at to make it a safe win for Zaka here. Finding the first survivor extremely early and in absolute unsafe territory. Pedro, did your alarm not ring before the round started, or what's happening here behind the harvester? That's going to be a ton of blood for the Oni, but Zaka also seemingly being very confident that this is going to be the down with the M1, but head-on coming into play here. The first rescue that is needed in the trial already, and Pedro hopefully now with a better trial and a better chase in this early game, reaching the shack, not dropping the pallet, being a little bit greedy here. Bloodlust coming in, Zaka collecting the blood orbs. Now it's going to be the 1v1 action at the shack here. Zaka and Pedro hosting their private ladder match, but Zaka immediately going to prioritize the generator over here, which is very understandable, has the power ready to go. So while Pedro is bleeding and going to progress the power even more, it is time to go on to Silhey here, and that is not going to work out as well. That's a interesting start for ELYSIUM. A lot of things are absolutely not working out, Ray.
Yeah, that is absolutely, definitely not working out. Giving a first tag and then giving it down on the survivor who wasn't even the first tag. Mind games the basement shack pallet a little bit. I can respect it, you know. A down shack pallet would just be on your face while carrying a survivor. That would definitely be a tie turner for sure. That was something that the survivors needed, but it's not what the survivors got. Deadlock is well in play, still hasn't even been revealed. Kicks that places Eruption on it, still has 4 stacks of Scourge Hook Pain Resonance, but this down happening in the middle of the map. We've already heard our analyst earlier talking about where you need to die. This map is huge, so if you die super far away, it doesn't even matter if the first chase is a little bit quicker than you'd like. Death spot is the most important, and we could already see the effects of that playing into this game. There is a generator that has such a good amount of progress on it near the shack, but Zaka is definitely planted himself right here and is camping, because this survivor up on this hook seems to be the prize. Needs to get Silhey out of the game. If you get a tunnel out, then the rest will follow. This is a dream start. Just the early game for Oni is just so important. Giving out that first hit was definitely a tie turner. Now it's just sitting with his power, not only with the insta-downs, but in basement as well. Zaka just pulls it out, goes into his power, sees the survivor all the way over here, and dang, Xeno with that last second frame stun just gets the killer with a tiny bit of BM. Tries to go for a nasty flick right there. It does not connect. It is not in time. Decides to go back to the basement, see if anybody is sneaking on down there. It doesn't seem so. Finds these scratch marks over here. Pedro throws the pallet, trying to be a little bit safer. Is anybody going to see the survivor in the basement? Silhey, no. Seems like he's going to have to just pass away down here. Rest in pieces. Maybe, however, they'll be able to get some generators for his death for this a little bit of time spent over here. Silhey, it seems like you're just out for the count, my guy. But you know what? Maybe it won't be a completely completely for naught. It'll be a good trade. They get one generator done. I don't know if that's enough, man. They need to get this progress going, and Deadlock makes that so difficult. Not only does it block the next generator with the most progress, it also lets Zaka know which generator has the most progress, so he can come over here, kick it, and place Eruption on it. Already on the chase of another survivor as well. It's looking good for Zaka.
It's really looking good for Zaka. Yeah, this was not the survivor trial that you needed on the side of ELYSIUM, especially with that elimination on 3 generators standing. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a disaster. In a grand final, this is not allowed to happen. Pedro is going to take the next chase here. Maybe he can make up for the mistake in the first chase a little bit. Good drop here, good mind game, making sure that he's not getting injured. This would be the chance right now, right? If this chase here is an absolute blast, which it's not, as you can see here, never mind. This was the chance, and Pedro decided to not take it. Back onto Zeno on the couch here, trying to get a little bit more blood potentially of this injury to then have the power ready to go, and forcing Zeno to go over towards this TNL, which is once again not really the tile where you would like to play against the Oni. That's why Zeno is quickly rotating towards this relatively safe pallet. Really well done. Zaka immediately getting rid of it, making sure that the resource is removed from the trial. Swatter is cranking a generator in the distance. Pedro is also going onto a generator. Now Zaka with the swing. Zeno is not going to take the injury right here. This is the chase that we need, and this is the chance for a potential recovery. And now we're going back towards the pallet that no longer stands, so that's going to be an injury, but with the speed boost it does allow Zeno to get back towards the relatively strong pallet over here. Great chase by Zeno. Chance for a comeback. It is still going to be insanely difficult to make a comeback since we have the elimination already, but I would not count ELYSIUM out yet.
Definitely not. Mostly because the generators that are left are fairly close. Zaka will be extending over here to see if there's any progress that is happening. Zeno is completely healed up, although the evidence of where that happened is very evident. Zeno scares a bird over. Oh, wait, no, there's over here as well. Could have been over here. Did see a bird get scared. Zaka is investigating, finds Swatter, knows that Zeno is also close by, possibly just trying to go for one of these downs. I think it's very brave trying to just walk with the sprint burst against an Oni that not only has power, but has the Akito's crutch, which is speed, making it so it's really oh, that's so rough. Oh no, look at that as well. They didn't get off the generator to outplay the eruption. Oh no, doesn't even go for a flick, but it's just playing it safe. Oh man, that's a huge snowball. That's why this killer is so scary in power. Not only gets Swatter through the pallet, but sniffs out Pedro, sees his aura for an incredibly long amount of time because of eruption. Now Zeno is the last man standing. But will they be able to recover from this? A snowball like that is just absolutely game-ending. You know, it's not looking too good for ELYSIUM after that. That was such a good play.
That was really great, yeah. Love to see that, especially in a grand final, where you always think, how are these players just pulling it off when they are on this important stage in this important situation here? But that was really smooth. Zaka going back towards the generator over here. Every 5% kick is very welcome here to defend it a little bit easier. And back onto injured Pedro here. He's going to hold W, trying to get the distance. The life is going to help a little bit to make at least a turn here, and popping up behind the window over here. But now he's going to be in difficult mind game situation here. Vaults one time, then has the patience to not panic vault back into the killer. Now not the safest pallet around, and Pedro was making one turn too often, so that's going to be the second hook stage for him. Elimination coming out onto this survivor very soon as well, and ELYSIUM still not with the needed impressive progress on the generators that it would really take to move towards the win condition here. 5 stages so far, ladies and gentlemen, 7 on 3 from the previous trial. So if Pedro dies, the next stage on a survivor would be the tie condition. Zeno, however, is finishing a generator, and we had 75 to 80% on Swatter's generator, so the end game is relatively close. The only thing, Ray, that I'm not seeing after reaching the end game is how all of these survivors are supposed to escape with taking the stages out of the door, and with a fresh hook now being on the floor and Zaka slugging in mobility mode, I feel like we have to say we have to say goodbye to the chances.
I'm gonna, you know what? Maybe Pedro's him. He's him. Oh my god, disgusting flick. Never mind. That would have to been like 11 seconds right there. The 10-second borrow timer must have just ran out. That will be the set point being secured for Eternal. They did a great job. They absolutely deserve that right there. We'll be cleaning up this game a little bit. A 4K1, respectable result. Respectable. Is able to use the snowball potential of Oni. That's what we were missing from the last game. Yeah, there was some last second hits, but with some power that Zaka used, he was able to get multiple survivors. He was able to just get these downs quicker, hitting people through pallets as well. We know that these survivors they don't have too much disparity in terms of ping, so a hit like that is not something that can really be expected, right? They thought that they had a little bit more time to throw that pallet, but got a little tiny bit of a hit through it. So Zaka will be taking this set out from underneath them. This will put us at 2-3 in favor of Eternal. So if Eternal takes one more set, they win, because they are the winner's bracket, right? We don't have a Joker set. So Elysium needs to win consistently from now on if they want to take this tourney.
Very, very impressive indeed. Yeah, one more set potentially is enough to reach it here, and that would be the Blight. And honestly, just the fact that Blight and Nurse would be set number 7, but the fact that we are speeding it up so much towards the end of the grand final, this is something that I find really, really interesting, right? We started slow, I would say, Wraith, then we speeded up a little bit, Houndmaster, Dark Lord, then we took a step back again, and now we are entering the S tier stage. Instantly after entering the trial, there is going to be a killer at one of the survivors' tails. Chase is going to start. Room for decision making and for adjustments in the game strategy are just not existent. You need to be basically on your toes from the get-go. And this is going to be interesting because Elysium, on the one hand, is under a lot of pressure, and this can really lead to mistakes in Blight and Nurse sets, and when these S-tier killers are profiting from your mistakes, it can go really, really downhill. On the other hand, especially Elysium is a team that plays best against the strongest killers under the most horrible circumstances, so potentially we are just unlocking an absolute beast here, and that is about to unleash in trial number 11 when we are going into the Blight. Ladies and gentlemen, we are setting up the Blight, and we will hear from our hosts and our analyst Tobi what they are thinking about the upcoming set.
Blight is going to be a whole different story because we don't really have, or I want to say conventionally known, neither Nightlight, Xeno, Zaka are like known to be those extremely powerful Blight lanes that they always pivot toward this killer. They are not the specialists that we see on other teams, or even though Grenout is now on Eternal, but or at the moment at least. But they're not a Grenout, they're not even a Crow from Rapture or what we had with the Chinese team at the start with that incredible Blight performance still. So this can really go either way. Both of these teams have killers that, when Blight at least came out, they tried to be incredibly dominant. Zaka made his name on this killer even. That's a blast from the past if anyone is interested in that, because Zaka started out on Team Eternity, and he wanted to be one of the best Blight players. And so he kept grinding and grinding. No one believed in him. But in the end, he turned out all of a sudden to be the best Blight player in the community. So that's how he got there. But we're not even going to see Zaka now. We're going to see Nightlight on the Blight as well, since he's also a big fan of this killer. And then obviously Xeno in the reverse fixture. What do my fellow co-hosts have to say about Blight that we are going to see on? I believe it's going to be Ormond as well. That they've picked. So obviously again that map with an abundance of fillers that Blight is most likely going to struggle quite a lot on, unless we see some mechanical prowess from Nightlight and Xeno. So yeah, I'm really curious to hear what you have to say about him.
Yeah, so maybe in a second, Tobi can tell us about the stats on Ormond 3, but just in general here, Nightlight, this is his killer pick. This is Eternal's pick. It is match point, and Nightlight has the chance here to bring home the whole tournament for his team with this result. The Blight and S tier set here is going to require the peak of survivor coordination. Almost no mistakes in communication or in chase, or else this killer will snowball out of control, even though all of the strongest things in Dead by Daylight are allowed on the survivor side here. I mean, except for things like brand new parts and syringes, of course, I mean, under our rule set. But there will be the deliverances, the decisive strikes, and even then, that will not be enough if Nightlight is on his game here. So, Tobi, what have the stats been like on Ormond 3 for the Blight?
The stats on Ormond 3 and Fracture Couchshed are basically the same, actually. The maps are split equally between on the Blight. We have like 4 picks on Fracture Couchshed and 5 picks on Ormond 3. There's also one Wrecker's Yard game, but the stats are basically identical for both maps. We see an average of 9.4 hook stages per game. Blight has one of the lowest generator count per game, so the survivor teams are struggling the most against the Blight to finish any generators. So this is something we should keep an eye on. The 4K rate is around 50% to be exact. And yeah, Mount Ormond 3 is a pretty nice map for the Blight, with a lot of space for him to use against the very experienced survivor roster. And I'm pretty excited to see it. So without further ado, Diarrhea, let's take it away.
A Blight with a 4K with 50%. So that means that one of these teams is gonna 4K and the other team is not gonna. I'm just gonna take that at face value. And you know what? I'm not gonna think too hard about it because, you know, as a caster, I don't think, I just yap. Already, we're looking strong with Nightlight on the Blight against the team Elysium. We've seen Nightlight play this killer in the past. We know that he is dangerous, not to be trifled with. Corrupt Intervention already blocking off a good portion of the map. Pop goes a Weasel and Eruption for some good regression and some good map pressure as well. Hex, Wretched Fate, once again. I think I underestimate that perk. I cannot believe how often we see use out of that. It must just be super underrated. It does provide even just the tiniest bit of slowdown. He just throws that bullet right in his face. Seems like he wants to style on Nightlight, but he said, no thank you, I'm going to hit you anyway. Swatter will be taking the first injury of the match. And now seems like he's in a compromising position. This is a tile that is a little bit easier to outplay the Blight, but not as easy as we once thought, because this will be Swatter being caught out guard right here. Yes, indeed. No, he's not. He's absolutely juicing with just a couple of boxes and some snowboards. does delay the first down. First generator does come through, even though corrupt intervention is in effect. I am willing to bet that was a double generator, but gets outplayed normal style. Might as well have been an M1 killer. Nobody is lurking around for the pallet save. That will be the first down, the first hook, and the first regressions coming out. Nightlight using his rushes to go back into the map. A good start.
I don't know why it always takes a difficult trial for Team Elysium to then absolutely show off in the upcoming trial. It's the complete opposite to the Oni set that we have seen. On the Oni, it is much easier to delay the first down, yet that didn't work on 2 survivors. And now we are having 1 minute 13 against the Blight, which is actually really, really impressive. 1 generator already completed, and whenever we are going against STS, it feels so good to trade 1 generator for 1 hook stage. Good move by Nightlight here, blocking the hook so Xeno cannot go for the trade. That is only possible now, but after the injury it is going to be just the down onto Xeno, but Nightlight doesn't want to accept that. He is going to get straight back onto Swatter here, wants a second down and progressing the elimination onto that survivor. Second generator has popped in the distance. That's the down for Swatter right here. The question now, is Nightlight going back potentially as he's expecting that someone is picking up Xeno in the distance? Well, the answer is they do not really care about the captain of Team Elysium. He's still vibing on the floor. Nightlight had made his decision. That's going to be Swatter back onto the hook here. Second stage coming in. Also interesting fact from the background, Wretched Fate, our hex totem here, has been used in 70 out of 233 games. So quite often, roundabout every third trial that we see, we are seeing this totem being brought onto the Blight. Nightlight back into the main building, but not to have a cozy time at the fire, because we have some more work to do. We have to eliminate Swatter. We, in best case, find one of the incoming rescuers, and that should be Pedro, unless we see it right here. There is going to be the heal onto Xeno, so the rescue is going to happen in the next few seconds, potentially even with 2 survivors that are now setting up for this task. Steps already taken right here, and we remember Xeno had the balanced landing, and Nightlight over-tuning it a little bit too motivated here with his Blight. Swatter taking the deep wound effect though, and I think, ladies and gentlemen, without being an oracle, we can assume what's happening next. It should be Swatter finding himself as the tunnel out.
Yes, indeed. Swatter is the prime target. We can already see the survivors know that as well. Look how many people are coming for a body block hit. That is the whole team. But there's only so much you can do. This is gonna be a death, whether you like it or not. Look at that. Eventually, Swatter will have to go down. He will fall. But how long will it take? They've got all of these shading tiles. Oh, tries to give the pallet priority to break it, but Nightlight knows better. Absolutely does a great job with patience. These teams are completely locked in. It is getting down to the wire. They've got 2-3. If Eternal takes another set, they win. And that is a winning beginning for a game right there. Nightlight, a first elimination comes out through on Swatter. Xeno places himself on the ground. I'm really, really willing to bet that is because of plot twist. I wonder if he knew where it was happening! He finds him! He was gonna plot twist and get up! He completely saw, but Nightlight had absolute eyes on him! And just is like, hey man, what's going on? Oh, you're just hanging around now. Okay, puts him up on the hook. That could be insane. However, he does jump off the hook with Deliverance. Pedro goes down. Deli has been used. We know that probably Xeno has Unbreakable, maybe, possibly, potentially. So if this survivor stays up on the ground, this is huge snowball territory. If the survivors aren't careful, it could be a 4K2, which would be a really, really good result for Eternal and would set the precedence that maybe they will be taking today's, they should be taking today's results.
But this is going to be the big, huge chase here, and it's so important that we are staying on our feet for a long time, because we have so much recovery to do on the side of Elysium. Out of nowhere, things are falling apart once again. We talked about it in the intro of this trial. Why does it take Elysium to have a bad game on Oni to then absolutely shine on the Blight? And now I'm adding a second question: why is it not the consistency throughout one trial? Why does it need to be a good end game ending, a good early game ending in such a chaos here? Xeno going down in the distance, so that is going to be the plot twist coming in once again. We are going for the second attempt here, basically, together with the tenacity. Let's see if Nightlight will be able to find him one more time. If that's the case, then we can officially call Nightlight the game sense master of Dead by Daylight here, and that's going to be a little bit of scouting, but I think Nightlight does really know where he has to look and does realize where now we are a little bit off. I was thinking slowly we are moving into the right direction, but it's actually taking a little bit more than that. So Xeno now standing back again. That is obviously one final chance for Team Elysium, but is it going to be enough? That's the question here. We cannot have a quick hook once again. We cannot have a slug. We cannot waste our time in picking each other up. What we need is a longer chase now. And of course, we are now slowly talking about the generator win condition here. But you would at least like one more gen, because then you can force Eternal into breaking a 3-gen, and that is giving you the chance to either take the win or the tie condition. So getting generator number 4 is a really important task here for Team Elysium. Nightlight realizes that as well, going cross map with the Blight, as he's suspecting Pedro over here, Silhey over here, to work on these generators. Very nice patience here on the pallet, getting a little bit of distance, but it will take a little bit more work for our survivors in order to get the needed pressure in. Is it going to be these successful mind games? That's the questions here. One more fake. And that's going to be Pedro 1, wow. Pedro 2. Good job here by our survivor. And that's going to be the down right here. I think I said Silhey, but the quality of the screen share for me is very bad at the moment. So thank you to my Mountain Net. You guys can all send an email to my provider. Back towards the generator over here. Silhey is healthy together with the Xeno. And this is for me the final beacon of hope, that we have 2 survivors that are not even injured, and I hope we will see a little bit of more work being done on these gens.
More work indeed. The survivor that was slugged over there by that generator that had a little bit of progress does get picked up, but they are still injured. They came back from a potential 4K2. Now it's anybody's cards. Anybody could definitely pick up a generator and get it completed. Nightlight definitely still has to work for it. There are a lot of pallets that are still up, and the structures of Orbit make it a little bit more difficult. It's not a free 4K2, and if he doesn't keep on these survivors, it looks like more generators could be done. They're sitting in a really good spot. Even though Eternal looked like they had this game in the bag, Elysium survivors always just show up with their 3v1s. I feel like this is the one team that always consistently plays a 3v1 so incredibly well. We definitely see them do it. I remember in the past, they always do so well on Ghost Feast Larry sets. It seems that like when they have 4 survivors, they are weaker than when they have 3. So if there's any team that can bring it back, it is definitely Elysium. Even if Nightlight pulls out some incredibly good chases, he still has to hit people twice, put them up on hook. It seems that he is definitely going to be going for a slugging strategy, however, which is, incredible crouch, which is a really good strategy to go for, not only because it lets you circumvent the time it takes to hook somebody. Oh my God, it just clouded on Nightlight here. Not only does it take time to hook survivors, you also activate their perks. You also activate the perks that happen after a hook, We saw that the Claudette, I think it was the Claudette, had Sprint Burst and Blood Rush, a perk that lets you refresh an exhaustion perk right after you get unhooked. So if the Nightlight takes time to put somebody up on hook, well, guess what? You're just activating all these other things. Also, I believe Pedro had Renewal. So if he gets up on a hook, that's just a free heal. So, you know, Nightlight is definitely going to be looking to slug everybody. Doesn't know exactly what perks everybody has, but it seems like the strategy might be backfiring a little bit or not. Like the survivors are just doing such a good job of wasting his time. Put somebody onto the ground, activates Eruption. This generator in the middle has a healthy amount of progress. Over here, Pedro also has a healthy amount of progress. This is what you get when you play with fire. The survivors bites back. They are doing such a good job of just pressuring multiple generators at one time. Nightlight has to take the hook now. It will give him a proc of Pop Goes a Weasel, but it seems like Pedro instead is going to pop his generator. That is huge. Getting another generator done out of that scenario that was earlier, my God. Applies Pop and Eruption to the mid-gen right here. The one that's further away gets done. Yes, they're in a more 3-gen setup, but getting that one generator done is just, it moves mountains. It's the difference. In a Blight set such as this, one mistake could lead to a huge snowball. And the survivors know that. They said, hey, yeah, we're going to have to deal with this 3-gen scenario, but at least it isn't a 4K2. A 4K1 is a better playable result. Comes back to the hook. Silhey takes that hit, however, will be going to the deep wound. Xeno out here doesn't take a tag. That's huge, actually. Overextending a little bit so he doesn't get the 1-for-1. So now that survivor gets away scot-free, has to come back to this because Pedro has been working on it very diligently. Generators are getting crunchy, too. With Eruption in play, it makes it so the regression events are definitely reached sooner. We don't see oh my God, insane dead hard. We don't see a lot of people lean into the 8-gen regression events, but maybe we'll see it now. It just seems like it takes such a long time to get there that the survivors tend to just do the gens in time. Will Nightlight commit to this? Will he go back to the generator? Silhey jumps into the locker, trying to bait out Nightlight to pick him out. It might be that Pedro's generator will get done. It's been a long time. If the two, Xeno and Pedro, are doubled up on it, it seems like that generator will definitely indeed be getting done. Oh, Pedro is working on it. You hear the scream from across the map. Will it be enough, and will it be done in time? Oh, so close. It's so close. Oh, get that out of the corner. Will it be enough? Will you get grabbed? Oh, tries to go for a little bit of a mind game. Hey, you're going to work on this. I'm going to pull you off. No, you're not. I'm going to hit you. Oh, I'm going to try to kick the generator anyway. But the right call by the survivors makes a huge difference, and it is now going to be, at the very least, a 4K5. Excellent commitment from the survivors right there. Exactly what they needed. What is Nightlight doing? Almost gives the pick onto Pedro right there, but it seems like he is hot on his tail, seeming a 4K5. A huge difference than what we thought was going to happen earlier. Okay. There we go. Yep. That's everybody. Everybody's gone. Everybody's dead. That is a 4K5 by the survivor team, ELYSIUM versus the killer of Eternal Nightlight. There we go. A very, very good result. But we did say earlier at the very beginning of the match that a Blight has a 50% chance to 4K now. So what needs to happen from ELYSIUM here to win? They need to 4K1. They need to get all of the survivors out of the game with one generator remaining. If they want to tie, it should be a 4K5. But they need to at least tie. They need to. Because if Eternal takes the set point for them, if they are able to get their survivor team to get out of the gate with even one stage, that will mean that Eternal will be winning. This is down to the wire. Their killer needs to lock in. It's a really tough result to beat, getting a 4K1, especially because these survivors have just absolutely shown up. Eternal survivors are doing so good today. So they really, really need to lock in. They really need to play their hearts out to try and stay in it. ELYSIUM is also in the loser's bracket as well. So it's not enough that they have to take this set. They have to take even more sets. They have to take a Joker set as well if they want to win. So only winning from here on out, because if Eternal takes even another set from them, then that will be them winning. Sorry guys, I think Dyer's internet died, so you have just me, but I will be tossing you over to our hosts, our analysts, possibly talking about what is needed from the team to win these sets from here on out. Take it away from me.
Thank you, Ray. And yeah, so ELYSIUM, if they want to win this grand finals, they need to win out. They cannot lose any more sets, and they also will have to go through the Joker set of whatever Eternal wants it to be. And this Survivor set against Nightlight's Blight is a great start for them. That is exactly what they needed. They just need to continue carrying that momentum now. They need their killer to get a 4K1. And they need to continue winning from there with that momentum. Definitely easier said than done, but they've made a good start here with this Blight game.
You know, talk about a blast from the past, because this game was very reminiscent of a game I watched, I want to say 3 years ago, when it was Nightlight on Killer, Blight, on Groening Storehouse in a Russian tournament called Ping Tournament at the time, against Sequence, and they had a death at 3 generators remaining, just like we had just now, and somehow, because of their fantastic individual efforts, they were able to keep Nightlight at bay, and in the end still 2 out. And that's almost what we got here too as well, but the main difference is that in today's timeline, Eruption exists, and back then it hadn't been that strong yet, or at least it wasn't as strong as we know it now. And I want to emphasize on how great Nightlight tried to play around that last generator pot, because I feel like that needs much more admiration than what it looked like. So the reason why he waited for Sille in that locker wasn't because he was trying to wait out his mend, because he knew he had Eruption on the generator that was being doubled on, and he wanted to be unpredictable on the grab. So he was waiting intentionally, waiting for Sille to basically call out to his teammates, oh, he's just waiting for my mend, you guys can get back on the gen. And then he grabs him, gets the Eruption. Both of those survivors wouldn't be able to work on it for that, I think, 2-second window, that is, when you stand up and scream. And then Nightlight had almost ample time to return. He did get the down onto Pedro, but Zeno was able to play around it, even though Pedro was lying right beneath his feet. I'm hoping he held shift, and it wasn't just down to luck that the Zeno or the generator took priority over the reset, because that would have been really grim. And that situation, it is so difficult to play around, because obviously you're trying to work on the generator, but you don't want to get grabbed. But also the moment you let go, Nightlight can just walk around and kick it. And the moment that kick comes through, it's GG.
Yeah, and Mathis, I want to jump in and provide some insight into that gen mind game, because the injured Pedro there taking the first hit doesn't really matter. It comes down to the healthy survivor and the killer. And let's think about the opportunity cost on both sides here. Zeno does not want to get grabbed, which means that he's going to be more likely to get off of the gen to avoid getting grabbed, whereas Nightlight, he knows that the grab isn't going to be very likely, because that's what Zeno is trying to avoid the most, so the killer is more likely to try to go for the kick. Because going for the kick means that the survivor just loses the chance to complete the generator. If they can even start the kick animation, it's over for the survivors. So what we saw there was Zeno calling Nightlight's bluff and staying on the generator, and that was what was able to win it for ELYSIUM there. Really cool stuff. The mind games, the opportunity cost at play there. That is why we love competitive Dead by Daylight, those interactions like that.
And the balancing, we see Alchemist Ring. The combination of Alchemist Ring and this map allow Blight to be so brutally relentless. It could have... Oh, that's exactly why we've seen ridiculous results on Blight in the past, because the moment you get one person out of the game and enforce that 3v1, even if you've got 3 people split across the entire map working on separate generators, it is so easy to catch up, because you're immediately everywhere. You're stronger than Earth in that regard. And I'm still hoping we get to Nurse, because it would be amazing, obviously, if we ended this on a 4-3 rather than a 4-2. If Xeno does not manage to stack up to that result, because he does need to get a 4K before Generator's Pop. That will be his win condition. And yeah, also, the talking about that, the individual efforts we made as well, with Swatter's first chase somehow managing to outmaneuver the 5 consecutive rushes around that one collection of crates on the inside on the Ormental. Tobi, did that affect the expected downtime at all? Did it make it so that Nightlight wasn't able to match up to it, or because of Swatter's effort there, or was it still on time?
It was basically still on time. We have like a 3-second difference, so this was basically in line with what we usually see. The downtime would have gone significantly more down if Nightlight would have been able to hit one of those rushes. I quickly want to throw in one more thing. One single perk alone kept Elysium in this trial for a long time, and this was Xeno's plot twist. The first time around it didn't work out so well, but the second time it basically saved them the game, otherwise they would have lost it on 2 generators remaining. So this plot twist was really, really crucial to keep the hopes alive of winning the grand final. And yeah, I think Mr. Direwolf is back from his adventure onto the mountains to restore his internet connection. And without further ado, let's send it over to Diane Ray for our second Blight trial.
Thank you so much, Tobi. With the snow on Ormond and the snow outside of my window, we are entering trial number 12 in the 6th set of this grand final. And the big question is, ladies and gentlemen, after they didn't make the comeback and then managed to do the comeback, they now need a comeback after making a comeback when the comeback was needed, since the first comeback didn't end up in the comeback that could be called a comeback when they needed one. So let's see if Xeno is able to do that, ladies and gentlemen, here against Dan the Man and his squad from Eternal on Ormond 3. We heard it earlier from Tobi, a very, we could say famous map for the Blight. Almost 50% of the games happened here, so we can expect quite some experience from our killers and survivors for a great match. And potentially it will be the last one for Team Eternal. Win condition is very easy. As soon as one of these Eternal Andes is walking out of the door, they can celebrate and they can crown themselves as the winner of the Winter Circuit 2025. Xeno trying to find the first survivor. It almost feels like we are back in 2019 when stealthing out Corrupt was a strategy, a very risky one, yet one that leads to a high reward. Someone is dropping a pallet behind Xeno, panicking a little bit too much potentially there, but now we have our first survivor, but we already need to take care of the generator progress. Really not the start Xeno is looking for.
Yes, indeed. I would be sweating in my boots right now because the survivors are definitely eyeballing the prize. What they need to do is get one stage out the door. They already have such a huge head start. There we go. Corrupt intervention is about ran out. They're trying to just get as much progress as they can before this first generator gets done. Bro, I would not be chasing Spitz because Spitz has an incredible track record. I don't know if it'll be beat this game, but he is the one who has incredible least amount of hook stages, I think, out of anyone. And yeah, you can see why. Goodbye, you can't chase that guy. Trying to get around to get some hits right here, but it's just not enough. Xeno has to work so hard, and the survivors are just seemingly so confident. Look at all these filler pellets that need to be thrown and need to be broken and need to just be chased around, trying to come over here. We know that we can see the perks from Zaka right here. He is the Decisive Strike plot twist survivor, the live survivor. This means that he is the prime target. They want the killer to chase it, and it seems like they are definitely taking the bait. Zaka going in, and he's just gonna go die in basement because this means that he's far away from everything. far away from all of the generators, far away from anything that the survivors are going to be working on. The first generator gets done. That will be a Zaka placed up upon the hook. Xeno needs to now go be a presence everywhere on the map. Does have a pop of Pop Goes the Weasel. Will go around and apply to a generator, but the first one gets done. There's so much progress. Granted, last game, the first hook did happen with the first generator. Maybe the survivors are playing a little bit too defensively right now, but it really doesn't seem like it. Seems like they are just looping circles around this man who takes another pallet stun to the face. Saka gets saved from basement. And there we go, Xeno is off to the races, already running back to that basement to try to get some sort of tunnel out, perhaps? A tunnel out strategy would be the prime target here, making it into a 3v1, just as Zaka did in the last game. But do you know, Xeno, that Zaka is your decisive strike? So if you go and you chase this man, you better wait out a 60-second timer, or else they are going to take a huge fat stun right into your face. However, Zaka drops himself on the ground with plot twist. Yeah, there we go. There's the decisive strike. It is now gone. Now needs to get this down way quicker than last time. Can't get through there. Slow vaulting. Zaka says, hey man, I know I had a lot of distance with decisive strike, but I'm going to stay in this corner because my team is on the gens. And we can see on the UI that 2 gens are done. 2 are closer to getting done as well. Another third one has been started. Vaults the window. It's blocked. Oh, Zaka's going to die basement. It seems like such a good result for them.
Oh yeah, even though he is going into basement here and just costing Xeno a few extra seconds, you can tell that Eternal almost doesn't even need this extra time. 3 generators coming out already in exchange for only 2 hook stages so far. And yeah, of course, it makes sense to eliminate Zaka. It is good as an S-tier killer to play against only 3 survivors, but the question is, will we even get the elimination done so that it still matters, or will we already be in the end game in this grand final here? Absolute smashing performance when they are under the stress test here. Eternal with 75% almost in the distance on generator number 4. Xeno scouting the area here, but we do not really find the rescuer or anyone else around that could end in a quick down. What we would need is almost a miracle here. We would need Zaka somehow missing a few skill checks on his timer here and then just going towards the correct generator. But obviously this is not going to happen when we are asking Team Eternal. Dan is very happily taking the trade here, has the deliverance as well, so even that will come out punishing for Xeno, and he cannot go after Zaka in the elimination. You need to go cross map right now in order to defend the generator that is here, but Spitz is waiting at the pallet and is getting the stun, making it look so easily. Just a few seconds away here from potentially being the winner of the winter circuit, and he's just casually proving the nerves of steel, getting the stun right there. And fun fact, ladies and gentlemen, if that final generator is going to be completed, that will be generator number 1000 in the winter circuit. So we are celebrating a little bit of an anniversary here, almost with the 1000th generator. Yo! Saying to Dan, yes, I can, with a very nice flick here. Beautiful. Xeno potentially doesn't like generator 1000 as much as we do when we are looking at this. Zaka is around here, but once again, Xeno not having the time to go for the down onto him because this generator is so close towards the completion, and this generator would almost make it impossible, because if we are going to endgame with 4 survivors, how would you stop all of them from getting out of the door? You cannot chase this survivor once again because they will be back here onto this generator. Ray, this is one of these situations where the killer needs to be at 3 locations at the same time, and if Eternal doesn't make a mistake, they should sail in safe waters here.
Yes, indeed, especially because the survivors are just healed up. It was looking like, oh, maybe it could be snowball potential territory with everybody injured. But, oh man, look at this. Takes a hit, Spitz does, but Dan and... Oh my god, Hardwell. I'm sorry, the names are also a little bit hard for me to see. Dan and Hardwell are healing up. They're taking the time. They want to play it slow. They want to play it careful because the win is in their sights. Not only do they have to complete the last gen is just the stepping stone because they need to get one stage out of the door. But let's be honest, if you get that gen done, which is done, gen number 1000 gets done in this game. Now they just need to escape with one stage out the door, but how can you be in multiple places at once? You're just one singular blight. Sino needs to be pressuring all of these survivors at one time, but Dan is already on the door and out of the game. Spitz now is gonna... Oh man, Spitz's record, no, you can't let him go. Oh man, he's gonna be... he's gonna die. That's the worst part about this. There we go, ladies and gentlemen, you have it. Our winner of the Winter Circuit here will be Eternal, taking it out from Elysium. A wonderful performance by their killers, by their survivors. Very well played.
Very fantastically done. Team Eternal with a goodbye because they are going to split up soon in 2 different rosters, taking one final success together. So beautiful to watch. This was, without exaggerating, one of the best grand finals that we had in a long time. Such an up and down. Elysium bringing it back to a 2-2 on the halftime, and then such close games, such great strategies in place here. What an absolute great great grand final that we have seen here today.